Hello, everybody. Gonna have to find me some nice music to go into the background. I did like the piano thing I did last time, so maybe I can find that again. Not sure if I added it or not. I should have added it. Should have added it. But, you know, we can always do these lo-fi spring vibes. I think that'll be low enough. Alright, we're on chapter 9, so that's where we're gonna start. From last week. If you did not see last week's, there's a VOD on my YouTube and Twitch that you can look. You can, I mean, like, it's obviously 3 hours long, so you're not gonna be like, it's like 2.5 hours long, so you're not gonna be able to catch up before I'm finished with this book, but you can always watch that VOD and then go back and watch this VOD. So last time we left off, Lucille and Asperia were having a hard time, both with training and getting people, the nations, involved. And becoming like one big friendship circle. So, I like to make my characters have a hard time. They were. And, what's his face? Brond, that's his name. Brond was having a particularly hard time because he decided to bring the headmaster back, and the headmaster came back as a zombie who wanted to kill other people, so he's not having a good time either. But we're gonna continue on. Chapter 9, 1 month later. Asperia gazed out the window of her study, losing herself in the vibrant hues of the dusky sky. She sighed, her heart swelling with anticipation as she recalled her recent conversations with Lucille. Asperia? Lucille's voice echoed from the doorway, pulling her from her daydream. Ah, Lucille. Asperia turned, smiling at the vision of the star speaker before her. I was just thinking about our plans for tomorrow. Me too. Lucille's cheeks flushed with a delicate pink, her eyes shining with excitement. I can't wait to spend the day with you, just the two of us, away from everything else. We almost never get the chance. Indeed, Asperia murmured, her thoughts turning to their upcoming date in the woods near the church. The prospect of escaping the confines of the academy, even for a brief respite, filled her with eagerness. More importantly, it would be an opportunity to further explore the depths of her feelings for the enigmatic priestess. Although they undoubtedly grown into a couple, it was rarely the focus of their time together. Have you given any thought to where we might go? Lucille asked, stepping into the room and closing the door behind her. I have, Asperia replied, a secretive smile playing on her lips. There's a secluded grove not too far from here, where lots of wildflowers are blooming right now. I believe it would make for a perfect setting, don't you? Sounds enchanting. Lucille's eyes sparkled like the stars she held dear. I'll leave that part to you. Then it's settled, Asperia said, her heart fluttering at the tender warmth in Lucille's gaze. We shall meet at dawn and make our way to the grove. Perfect, Lucille beamed, clasping her hands together with an almost childlike innocence. Now, what should we bring for our picnic? Yes. Asperia furrowed her brow in thought. She knew the importance of selecting the right provisions, not only to satisfy their hunger, but also to create lasting memories. Let's pack a basket with some sweet fruits, maybe plums and pears, and some of Priscilla's freshly baked bread, along with a wedge of that soft, crumbly cheese you enjoy so much. That sounds delicious, Lucille agreed, her stomach grumbling at the mere mention of food. And to drink? Let's bring a flask of honey-sweetened tea, Asperia suggested, knowing Lucille's fondness for the fragrant beverage. It will be refreshing after a walk through the woods. Absolutely, Lucille nodded enthusiastically, a look of contentment settling on her face. I can already imagine it. Me too, Asperia whispered. For once, she found herself grateful for her past struggles as they led her down this unexpected path toward a love she never dared hope for. Tomorrow can't come soon enough, Lucille murmured, her eyes meeting Asperia's in a moment of shared anticipation. Agreed. With a final smile, Asperia turned back to the window, watching as the last remnants of daylight slipped away, leaving nothing but the promise of tomorrow's adventure with Lucille to fill her heart. At the first rays of sunlight filtered through the dense canopy, Asperia and Lucille embarked on their journey into the heart of the forest. The air hummed with the chorus of birdsong, and the scent of damp earth and dew-kissed leaves filled their nostrils. Tall trees stood like ancient guardians, their branches entwined into a complex embrace as if to create hidden sanctuary for the two lovers. Asperia, Lucille began, her voice soft. I've been meaning to ask you, what do you see for our future? I mean, after everything we've been through together, where do you see us going? Asperia considered the question carefully, her thoughts drifting like the dappled sunlight that played upon her face. It was almost ironic to be asked that question by someone who had quite literal visions of the future. I don't really care, as long as you're with me, she replied, reaching out to take Lucille's hand. We still have so much to learn about each other. You're a subject I'd be happy to study for the rest of my life. Lucille squeezed Asperia's hand gently, her eyes sparkling with unspoken emotion. Oh, you. What of your personal goals? Do you think you'll continue teaching magic and offering your powers to others? Of course, Asperia affirmed, her gaze unwavering. But I also want to explore the depths of my own magical abilities so that I can understand them better. You are inspiring, Asperia, Lucille murmured, her admiration evident in her warm smile. I'm honored to walk this path with you. As they continued to hike through the verdant undergrowth, the sound of the rushing water grew louder, signaling their approach to the babbling brook they had been seeking. As they rounded a bend, the sight that greeted them was nothing short of idyllic. A clear, sparkling stream meandered through the forest, its banks dappled with sunlight and dotted with vibrant wildflowers. Here, Asperia declared, her heart swelling with joy as she unfurled the blanket they had brought with them. This is perfect. Together they settled upon the soft grass, the melody of the brook providing a soothing backdrop to their picnic lunch. As they savored each bite of the sweet Nethalosian fruits and nibbled on the soft, crumbly cheese, their conversation flowed as effortlessly as the water before them. Asperia, Lucille began, her eyes searching her lover's face intently. Do you ever feel overwhelmed by the weight of your past actions? I know we've both made mistakes, but sometimes I worry that I'm not deserving of this happiness we found together. Lucille, Asperia replied, her voice firm yet gentle. None of us are without fault, but if anyone deserves happiness, it's you. She paused for a moment, looking around and drawing in a deep breath before sighing. Isn't it beautiful? Asperia whispered. Absolutely breathtaking, Lucille agreed, though her gaze never left the woman nestled against her side. Her voice softened as she added, much like you. A blush crept across Asperia's cheeks, and she buried her face in Lucille's shoulder as if to hide it. Feeling the steady rise and fall of her lover's breaths beneath her cheek, she allowed herself to be enveloped by the warmth of the shared embrace. Their love was a soaring symphony, one that drowned out the harsh whispers of doubt and discrimination that plagued her in the past. Asperia, Lucille murmured, her breath warmed against the other woman's ear. Slowly, she brushed her lips against Asperia's forehead, a feather-light touch that sent shivers down her spine. Lucille, Asperia breathed, her heart pounding in anticipation. She tilted her head up, her gaze locking onto Lucille's, as they shared a tender, passionate kiss. For a moment, the world around them seemed to fade away, leaving only the radiant sensation of two souls entwined in a dance as ancient, as eternal as the stars above. As they slowly broke apart, Asperia felt a pang of sorrow stab through her chest. I wish I could tell Headmaster Tharis about today, she confessed, her voice cracking with emotion. He was like a father to me, and it's so hard without him. He knew about us, but I never had the chance to sit down with him and tell him about it. Asperia, Lucille whispered, her hand cupping the other woman's cheek as she brushed away a stray tear. Headmaster Tharis would be so proud of the person you've become. You've faced so much, yet you've never let it break your spirit. Thank you, Asperia whispered, leaning into her touch. Your support means more to me than you could ever know. Promise me we'll face the future together, no matter what challenges lie ahead? She asked, her voice barely audible above the evening's gentle symphony. All that matters to me is that we're together. As long as I have that, I can never lose. Always, Lucille vowed, pressing a tender kiss to her forehead. Together, we'll conquer any storm that comes our way. As the last vestiges of twilight dissipated into the night sky, Asperia and Lucille reluctantly pulled away from each other, their hearts brimming with renewed love and admiration for one another. With a tender smile, Asperia began to gather their belongings, her fingers deftly folding the soft blanket they had shared, while Lucille carefully tucked away the remnants of their picnic feast. Let's make this a tradition, Lucille suggested as she closed the picnic basket, her eyes alight with warmth and hope. A special moment for us to escape the world and reconnect with one another. Asperia nodded enthusiastically. I would like that very much. She paused, considering some of the details of the future they discussed. Do you think we could find a way to change things for women in our society? Lucille reached out and took Asperia's hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. We could certainly do more, but I think in many ways we already have. Their hands intertwined, the pair set off in the moonlit trail back to the church, the babbling brook now nothing more than a faint whisper behind them. As they hiked, their conversation flowed freely, ranging from dreams of societal class reform to their own roles within the academy and the church. Perhaps we could do more with education, Lucille mused, her voice laced with determination. Maybe even establish scholarships for commoners to study at the academy, offering them to women and men equally. That's an excellent idea, Asperia agreed. You're never short of ideas. Lucille allowed a proud smile to grace her lips, eagerly absorbing Asperia's praise. As they neared the church, the warm glow of its windows cast a welcoming light onto the path. Asperia felt a sense of contentment wash over her. Here she was, walking hand in hand with a woman who not only understood her, but shared her dreams and passions. It was a dream come true. If she had to choose between this and her powers, she would not have to think twice. Thank you, Asperia whispered as they approached the church doors. For everything. I love you. I love you too, but you don't need to thank me so much, Lucille murmured, pressing a soft kiss to Asperia's temple. You're stuck with me now, whether you like it or not. I like it, Asperia said with a sheepish grin. That's the end of chapter 9. My nose itches like so much. My nose itches and it's a little bit stuffy. And that's why I keep having to stop for a second. Alright. Now that I've had a nice long big drink, it's time for chapter 10. For the past week, Asperia had been teleporting between kingdoms, bearing gifts of goodwill and engaging in the tiring work of talking to royalty. As part of the final peace agreement signed, she would be the one to meet with all of them personally. She had to make sure the agreement held together, after all. If one of the kingdoms started to feel left out, it would spell an end to everything she and Lucille had worked so hard to accomplish. As Asperia distributed her carefully curated gifts, rare books, enchanted quills, and even potent healing potions, the recipients' reactions ranged from stunned disbelief to awestruck gratitude. Though she had faced much ridicule and discrimination in her life, Asperia was determined to create a world where others didn't have to experience the same, regardless of their social standing. Even if the world was such now that she had to focus most of her energy on pleasing monarchs. Still, everything would be worth it now that she's returned. As she walked around the grounds of the academy, searching, she wanted nothing more than to see Lucille's face. Her search eventually led her to approach the training fields outside. Perhaps Lucille was observing young mages training, as she'd often do. Asperia! Cried a familiar voice, causing her heart to skip a beat. It was Lucille, but something was wrong. The desperation in her voice sent a chill down Asperia's spine. As her eyes finally found her lover, Asperia's breath caught in her throat. Lucille was on her knees in the center of a circle of armed assailants, her hands bound and her face streaked with tears. The sight made Asperia's blood boil. How dare they lay hands on someone so precious to her? Let her go, Asperia shouted, her voice cracking with rage. Release her now or suffer the consequences. Ah, Lady Asperia, what a fortuitous turn of events, sneered one of the captors, his eyes glinting with malice as he pressed his blade to Lucille's neck. We have quite the bargaining chip here, don't we? Even goddesses have their weaknesses. Asperia clenched her teeth, her mind racing as she weighed her options. There were faces she didn't recognize, but also so many that she did. Men and women she'd given magical power to and trained herself. Normal humans would be simple. Mages could prove tricky without considering their powers first. Go on, Lady Asperia, the captor taunted, a cruel smile twisting his face. Show us your full power. Are you faster than the blade already touching flesh? Asperia's heart raced as she considered her next move. She could feel the pulsing energy within her, ready to be unleashed at any moment. Yet warnings from Lucille and Headmaster Theris played out in her mind. She had to hold back, only using what power was necessary. If she got carried away, it would only fuel the goddess narrative and paint her as some kind of vengeful deity, and the kingdoms would either distance themselves from or fight over pleasing. Please, Lucille whispered, her eyes pleading with Asperia. Go easy on them. They don't understand what they're doing. Taking a deep breath, Asperia steeled herself for action. The air around her crackled with electricity as she channeled her arcane energy into her limbs. Enough stalling, one of the captors shouted, lunging toward her with his sword raised. In that moment, Asperia struck. With a flick of her wrist, she sent a bolt of searing light streaking through the air and into the attacker's chest. He crumpled to the ground, smoke rising from his body, barely clinging to life, but alive. Your threats won't work on me, Asperia snarled, her voice laced with fury. I won't let you harm her. The words had only just left Asperia's lips when she locked eyes with the man holding a sword to Lucille's neck. It took the time for him to blink once. His sword arm was broken, twisted behind him. Before he could scream, she slammed him against a nearby wall, materializing nails made of ice to bind his hands and feet to the wood behind him. The remaining captors hesitated, their eyes darting between their comrade and Asperia's fierce expression. Most of them were still processing what they'd witnessed too fast for their mind to keep up with, much less their eyes. They'd clearly underestimated her. Very well, one growled, stepping forward with a sinister grin. Let's see if you can handle all of us. As the captors charged forward, Asperia focused her power into another spell. A wall of shimmering energy materialized before her, deflecting the attackers' blows and leaving them momentarily disoriented. Lucille! Asperia called out, her voice strained with effort. When I give the signal, run! Asperia, I can't just leave you here, Lucille cried, her eyes wide with fear. Trust me, Asperia insisted, gritting her teeth as she maintained the barrier. I'll be right behind you. With a nod, Lucille braced herself for their escape. The captors recovered and were prepared to strike again. Asperia dropped the barrier and unleashed a torrent of raw power in their direction. The ground shook beneath her feet, and the sky above seemed to crackle with energy. Run, Lucille! Asperia screamed, the sound barely audible over the cacophony of destruction. As Lucille sprinted away, Asperia fought to keep her emotions in check. She couldn't afford to let her power consume her, not when so much was at stake. With each spell she cast, she reminded herself why she was doing this, for Lucille. She stepped forward, intent on teleporting Lucille to safety. Suddenly, 4 mages appeared from their hiding places, ambushing Asperia with their full power. The first formed a fireball that singed her flesh before it had even been let loose. As the woman prepared to hurl the ball of flame of Asperia, she countered by encasing her in ice, instantly dispelling her fire. She teleported in front of her, punching hard enough to shatter the hard ice, connecting her fists with the woman's stomach. Her eyes were wide with pain as she rolled across the ground, unconscious. Before she could turn her attention to the others, a torrent of powerful wind came from above her, with a force that would have crushed even the strongest warrior. Yet, Asperia was far beyond human. Bracing herself, she sprinted toward the confused mage, unhindered by the wind that was pushing everyone else back. She grabbed him by the collar of his robe, lifted him in the air, and slammed him on the ground, breaking many of his bones in the process, leaving him alive, but far from mobile. A line of blood was pulled from Asperia's hand, and she instantly realized she was facing one of the most powerful mages she had trained. The first blood mage. Before she could pull more blood, Asperia charged her body with electricity, allowing the current to flow through her own blood and into the blood mage. She screamed out in agony as smoke rose from her flesh. She collapsed to the ground, writhing in agony and gasping for breath. Again, she'd held back just enough not to take the woman's life. She'd taken down 3 mages in almost as many seconds. The confrontation began and ended in a flash. In the midst of the chaos, the 4th mage emerged from the state of invisibility next to Asperia, seizing the opportunity to snatch her sword from its sheath. The thief, a rogue mage among the captors, chanted an incantation as he traced arcane symbols in the air with the stolen blade. A sinister curse began to take shape, aimed directly at Lucille. "Asperia!" Lucille cried out, her voice tinged with terror. "Something's happening to me!" The young woman turned just in time to see Lucille's limbs stiffening, her skin hardening into a grisly shade of gray. Desperation clawed at the edges of Asperia's mind as she realized what was happening. Something she had not anticipated. The mage had cursed Lucille, turning her into a lifeless stone. "Lucille!" The name tore itself from Asperia's throat like a wounded animal, her pulse racing in tandem with her thoughts. The rogue mage exploded violently into a red mist, vaporized by the power of a sword his body couldn't withstand, after wielding power that wasn't meant for him. Asperia recovered the sword, returning its sheath and focusing her power toward Lucille. She imagined the stone curse vanishing in her mind, and just as she had cast every other spell, projected her imagined reality onto Lucille. Nothing happened. The stone continued to spread. How could this be? This had never happened before. "Stay with me, Lucille," she whispered fiercely, her fingers trembling as they brushed against the cold, unyielding surface of Lucille's cheek. "I'll fix this. I promise. I just..." "Asperia." Lucille's voice was barely audible, choked by the encroaching stone. Her eyes, once bright and full of warmth, were now dull and clouded, unable to meet Asperia's gaze. "Please," Asperia begged the silent heavens above. "There must be something I can do." She racked her memory for any fragment of lore or legend that might hold the key to saving Lucille, but found only an echoing emptiness. Her own limitations were collapsing down upon her. She tried again to stop the curse, tearing at the fabric of reality itself, but the curse would not stop. "Asperia," Lucille managed to gasp, her voice barely more than a breath. "I love you. It's okay. You tried. Try to forgive them." "Lucille, don't give up!" Asperia's voice was raw with grief and fear as she tried to think of some way to counteract the curse. Anything that might save the woman she loved from this terrible fate. But the relentless march of stone continued, creeping inexorably over Lucille's body until all that remained was a cold, lifeless statue. "Lucille!" Asperia choked on the name, her heart shattering like glass against the unforgiving reality of their situation. She had failed Lucille, the one time it mattered most. As tears clouded her vision, she swore an oath that echoed through the empty air. "I will find a way to bring you back, Lucille. No matter what it takes, I will not rest until I save you." As she stood before Lucille, stricken with grief as she watched her lover's body become stone, many other mages stepped out to surround her. Perhaps some were not a part of the group and were merely curious. She didn't bother to examine individual faces or interrogate those present to find out. Her eyes were too obscured by tears to see them clearly anyway, and her heart was too closed off now to care why they were there. Rage, raw, seething and untamed, coursed through Asperia's veins as she stared at Lucille's lifeless stone form. The air around her crackled with a bone-deep chill, shimmering with a frosty mist that clung to everything it touched. In that moment, the world narrowed to a razor-sharp point. The mages responsible for cursing Lucille would pay dearly for their actions. "Look at what you've done!" she screamed, her voice laced with fury that threatened to tear apart her from the inside out. Her breath came in ragged gasps as she summoned every ounce of power within her. "You want my power? Fine. Have it!" The ground beneath Hesperia's feet trembled and buckled, sending fissures racing across the earth like spiderwebs. With a mighty roar, she unleashed a torrent of ice and wind that howled through the training fields, transforming the landscape into a frozen wasteland. Trees splintered and snapped, their limbs shattering under the weight of the ice that encased them. But she wasn't finished yet. As the mages who had orchestrated Lucille's downfall struggled to escape, Hesperia focused her wrath upon them. Their screams echoed across the desolation as their bodies twisted and contorted, scales erupting on their skin like malignant blooms. Within moments, the once human mages were transformed into monstrous dragons, their cries of anguish punctuating the eerie silence. Hesperia's attention was drawn to a figure stumbling in the carnage. King Salahan, the cape of his battle armor billowing around him with the frigid gusts of wind. In his hand, he held a sword slick with blood, but Hesperia's fury blinded her to its significance. King Salahan, she spat, her voice dripping with venom. Were you so afraid of me that you stooped to this? Hesperia, the king replied, his voice tinged with an undertone of sorrow. I know your heart is heavy with grief, but... Oh, you know, she snarled, her eyes flashing with unspent anger. You never cared for her or her church. It was you who killed her parents. It's always been about power and control for you. Hesperia, listen to me. King Salahan took a step forward, his expression pleading. Save your lies, Hesperia shouted. He fell to his knees as his body went through the same painful transformation as the others. As the beasts stumbled about in confusion, barely able to move in their new, unfamiliar forms, Hesperia called forth more of her power, breaking apart a massive chunk of land and lifting it into the sky. More of her power surged as the ground beneath her rumbled like an earthquake and the rays of the sun no longer reached them. With the snap of her fingers, the land and the dragons disappeared and reappeared, so high in the sky they were barely bigger than a speck of dust to the naked eye. The land became a floating island, their new prison. Exhausted, Hesperia stood before Lucille. Her heart ached as she stared at the stone form of her beloved, the enormity of what had just transpired weighing heavily on her shoulders. The air around her seemed charged with residual magic from her outbursts, crackling and shimmering like heat waves above a scorching desert. With each breath, she felt the weight of her body pulling her closer to the ground, her limbs trembling with exhaustion. Forgive me, Lucille, she whispered, tears rolling down her cheeks, leaving trails of sorrow in their wake. I failed. I failed you. I failed everyone. Her voice was barely audible, a broken whisper carried away by the wind. As silence enveloped her, Hesperia began to feel the full extent of her exhaustion. She could no longer stand, her knees buckling beneath her as she sank to the ground. But even as her body demanded rest, her mind burned with fury and sorrow alike. Forgiveness, love, she murmured, echoing Lucille's final words. How can I find it within myself when all I feel is bitterness and pain? Was it all for nothing? Despite the cacophony of emotions churning inside her, Hesperia knew that she must try, for Lucille's sake. For all eternity, if that's what it took. But now, her mind could only think of destruction and revenge. She wanted to burn the world and everyone in it. She wanted to smash the kingdoms and their power structures to dust. But she could not bear to disappoint Lucille, who saw more in her than she saw in herself. She couldn't allow herself to become an even bigger monster than those who had wronged her. And so, with a heavy heart, she closed her eyes and allowed herself to slip into the realm of dreams, seeking solace in the respite it might offer. It was there, amidst the shadows of her subconscious, that she hoped to find answers, or at least a semblance of peace. As she drifted deeper into the abyss of sleep, images of her journey thus far flickered behind her eyelids. The discrimination she had faced, the battles she had fought, the moments of joy and love she had shared with Lucille. They taunted her, reminding her of the fragile balance that always existed between hope and despair within her heart. Hesperia finally succumbed to the exhaustion that threatened to consume her, though she'd invited it, allowing her dreams to carry her away from the cold, unforgiving world that had left her so broken and alone. That's the end of chapter 10. Very sad, very sad. We lost Lucille. And everybody's dragons now. Which, I mean, Dragons are better anyway, am I right? Not that I'm biased or anything. The dragons are clearly the superior race. Alright, I'm getting a drink. There are 17 chapters and an epilogue. So we've got roughly like 6 chapters and then a shorter chapter technically to go. Chapter 11, 2,000 years later. Now we're way in the future. 2 millennia had passed since that day, and the world had undergone countless transformations. Societies had risen and fallen, leaving behind remnants of their once great civilizations. Many of the kingdoms of Hesperia's time were now long forgotten, changed their names, or were conquered by neighbors. The magical realm had grown more complex and perilous, with humans struggling to live with magical power now more widespread than ever. Amidst the ruins of a long-forgotten academy lay the tome of the goddess, hidden from the eyes of mortals for centuries, protected by desolation and rumors of curses. Within its silent depths, Hesperia there stirred from her slumber, her body barely changed by the passage of time. Her lilac eyes, filled with wisdom and pain, blinked open, adjusting to the dim light. She pushed herself up from her cold stone resting place, her muscles protesting against the eons of disuse. As she rose to her full height, she leaned heavily on her sword. 2,000 years, give or take a few years, she whispered, the words feeling strange on her tongue. She gazed around the chamber, her eyes taking in the crumbling walls and faded frescoes. The air was heavy with dust, as if her very breath had been suspended in time. She could not help but feel a sense of loss and melancholy, realizing the world she had known now belonged to only the annals of history. Time has taken its toll on this place, even though it is new to me, she mused, her voice echoing barely softly against the stone. Perhaps it had also brought change to the hearts of those who dwell above. As she stood there, Hesperia allowed herself a moment to process all that had happened. Perhaps she had been imprisoned in this tome as punishment for her actions, but she had no way of knowing. Now she faced an uncertain future where friends and enemies alike were mere ghosts of a different past. Perhaps this new world holds key to saving Lucille. Whatever awaits me out there, she murmured, gripping her sword tightly, I will face it. As Hesperia emerged from the tome of the goddess, she was immediately struck by the desolation that lay before her. The once lush, verdant landscape had given way to a barren wasteland, devoid of life and vitality. The trees were gnarled and leafless, their skeletal branches clawing at the sky like desperate, pleading hands. The air was acrid and heavy, as the world itself were in mourning. Structures that still stood before now lay crumbled and forgotten. What has become of this place? Hesperia whispered, her voice barely audible against the oppressive silence. It's far worse than I left it. She took a step forward, her sword scabbard crunching on the charred soil beneath her feet. Her heart clenched with sorrow, the weight of 2,000 years pressing down upon her. How much suffering had unfolded while she slumbered, aware and powerless. Is there no hope left? She murmured, gazing out at the bleak horizon. Has all that once was beautiful been reduced to ashes and dust? She picked up a stick, infusing it with magic, turning it into a proper mage's staff. For what she had planned, she needed to retain all the magic in her sword, the original catalyst of magic's introduction into this world. She had no intention of drawing it, no matter what she encountered. As she walked, Hesperia's keen intellect began to piece together the story of the land's transformation. The crumbling ruins spoke of wars raged and lost, their once majestic advances now little more than rubble. The scorched earth bore testament to a world ravaged by decay, its surface cracked and fissured like the skin of some ancient dying beast. I thought this place might heal, she breathed, her words carried away on the ghostly wind. I never meant for this. Her thoughts turned inward, her emotions a maelstrom of guilt and regret. She had hoped that her actions might have brought about change for the better, but instead it seemed she had only doomed this place to despair and ruin. Was there any chance of redemption, any possibility of righting the wrong she had unwittingly set in motion? Perhaps, she thought, her resolve hardening like steel in the forge. There is still a chance to save what remains. Determined, Asperia pressed on through the desolate landscape, her staff tapping rhythmically against the ground. She would not allow herself to be defeated by despair, not when there was so much at stake. As she strode forward, her thoughts turned to those who had been lost, their memories fueling her. I will make this right, she vowed. Asperia's path through the desolation was suddenly interrupted by the appearance of a figure cutting through the haze. The man approaching had an air of quiet strength about him, his tall and muscular frame clad in worn leather armor that had seen its fair share of battles. His keen eyes were focused intently on her. His beard and short brown hair blew in the wind, and he looked as though he had just woken up from a similar slumber of his own. Miss? He called out, raising his hand in greeting as he approached. Are you all right? Asperia stopped in her tracks, startled by the sudden intrusion. Her heart raced within her chest, and for a moment she wondered if the stranger could be a threat. It had been so long since she'd encountered another living soul, and she couldn't help but feel wary. But as she studied his face, she saw no malice there, only genuine concern. Who are you? She asked cautiously, gripping her staff tightly. Blaine Grave, he replied with a respectful nod. I'm a traveling swordsman who serves no kingdom, drawn here by stories of an ancient goddess. Many warned me not to come, but I never expected to find a living soul in this forsaken place. His voice was surprisingly gentle, with a quiet wisdom that seemed at odds with his rugged appearance. Asperia watched him closely, trying to discern his intentions, even as her emotions warred within her. Was he friend or foe? Could he be trusted? Asperia Theris, she finally offered, still cautious but feeling the warmth of hope rekindle within her. He mentioned kingdoms. It seemed the rest of Nethelos fared better than this place. How did you find me? I've been following stories of ancient ruins and lost civilizations. Tales of love and magic, you might say, Blaine explained, his eyes flickering briefly to the remnants of the once great academy around them. Here I was told I could find the tomb of a certain goddess. He looked at her again, his gaze steady and unwavering. And now that I've found you, it seems those stories were correct. Asperia studied him for a moment longer, her thoughts racing. Could this man truly be an ally in her quest to right the wrongs of the past? Or was he merely another obstacle to be overcome? His arrival at the exact moment she woke up seemed suspiciously convenient. Very well, Blaine Grave, she said at last. But hear this. I will not tolerate deception or betrayal. Anything you may have heard about what I'm capable of, I assure you I am capable of far worse. Understood, Blaine replied with a shrug. You have my word. As they stood there amidst the ruins, two strangers brought together by fate, Asperia dared to hope that perhaps, just perhaps, she had found the ally she so desperately needed. Asperia, there's something else you need to know, Blaine said, his eyes dark with concern. It's possible the dragons are planning an attack. She felt a cold shiver run down her spine. The dragons were the very creatures born from her own mistakes, the manifestation of her past betrayals, and now they threaten the fragile world around them. Are you certain? She asked, trying to keep her voice steady despite the growing dread that gripped her. I assumed they were confined to the island above. This could only mean her powers had weakened, if some were able to escape and travel the lands below. Blaine shook his head. Not all of them, apparently. I can't say for sure, but there's no doubt in my mind they're considering it. He paused, looking at her intently. I don't believe my meeting you here is some kind of accident. There's a nearby tribe that kept records of all the unknown events linked to these dragons, which ultimately led me to you. I just never expected to find you here awake. Asperia clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms. The weight of her guilt bore down upon her, like a crushing wave, but she refused to let it overwhelm her. She had caused this mess, and she would be the one to fix it. Then we must act swiftly, she declared. We cannot allow the dragons to bring more destruction to this world. I must find a way to stop them and reverse Lucille's curse of stone. Agreed, Blaine said, his expression mirroring her resolve. We'll need to come up with a plan, gather allies, and face the dragons head-on. It won't be easy, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to help you succeed. With luck, we can talk them out of trying. Asperia looked into his eyes, searching for any sign of deception or hidden motives. But all she found was sincerity and a fierce commitment to their cause. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, she dared to hope that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't alone in this fight. "Thank you, Blaine," she said softly, her voice thick with emotion. "Your support means more to me than I can say. My last moments awake were surrounded by enemies. It'll be good to make a friend." As they walked side by side through the desolate landscape, Blaine cleared his throat before speaking. "You know, I came across a book detailing some of your history." Asperia glanced at him, curiosity piqued. "It mentioned your time at the academy and your relationship with Lucille." "Really?" Asperia asked, her heart aching at the mention of Lucille's name. "What else did it say?" "Many things," Blaine replied, his brow furrowing in thought. "There's something you should know, because it might have something to do with you. Every time I find myself in a new place or meet someone new, I always seem to encounter women who are deeply in love with other women. It's uncanny, really." He looked at her, his eyes searching for answers. "Do you have any idea why that might be? And why, after 2,000 years, did you wake up just as these events led me to you? There was a time I dismissed these encounters as coincidence, but there's clearly something more at work here." Asperia considered his words, her mind racing with possibilities. "I don't know," she admitted, feeling a strange sense of connection to the mysterious pattern he described. "Perhaps there is some force at work, guiding us toward one another. Or maybe it is truly mere coincidence. As for my awakening, I can only speculate that something has changed, something that drew me to the waking world. Lucille had visions that could read the stars, if only she were here. Then you could pose your question to her instead." They continued on, the wind picking up around them, carrying whispers of the past and echoes of the future. The conversation turned to strategy, their voices mingling with the rustle of leaves and the distant call of birds. "How did these scholars come by so much accurate information about my life?" Asperia asked. "It's been a long time ago, after all." Blaine nodded. "This tribe I mentioned isn't what I'd call a benevolent one. They captured 2 of the dragons and interrogated them for information. They held them captive for a long time. One escaped and one was freed. She's the one who suggested I seek you out and find a way to awaken you. Do you remember Priscilla?" "Oh, no," Asperia replied, her eyes betraying her building sorrow. "I didn't mean to turn her into one of them. In my anger, I must have turned everyone nearby. Priscilla was Lucille's dearest friend." Blaine frowned and nodded. "She suspected as much and wanted me to pass on the message that she forgave you. She went to visit the dragons, to talk them out of the war the other dragon intended to sell them on. He went by the name Undeath, though she said you would know him as Frond." "Frond," Asperia said with a long sigh. "Then we should go support her diplomatic efforts. Ready?" she asked. Blaine nodded, steeling himself for whatever lay ahead. "We're taking the fast route. Remember," she cautioned, "be prepared for anything." With those words, a sudden surge of energy enveloped them both, and in an instant they found themselves transported to the heart of the dragon's domain. As they arrived, the sight that greeted them was not what either had expected. Instead of a fearsome lair filled with monstrous beasts preparing for war, they found themselves surrounded by opulence and decadence. The city before them was a testament to excess, its street lined with gold and gems created by magic, its buildings adorned with intricate carvings and precious metals. And there, scattered throughout the city like bored children, lay the dragons. "This is not what I expected," Asperia whispered, her eyes wide with disbelief as she took in the scene. The dragons slumbered peacefully, their massive forms curled around ornate fountains and lush gardens, showing no signs of aggression or hostility. Their scales shimmered in the soft light, casting an ethereal glow over the abandoned city. Blaine gazed around in wonder, his earlier apprehension replaced by curiosity. "I can say the same," he murmured, his gaze lingering on a particularly striking dragon whose scales sparkled like 1,000 stars. Asperia frowned, her brow furrowed in thought. As they ventured deeper into the city, she couldn't help but feel a nagging sense of unease. The sleeping dragons seemed almost vulnerable, their peaceful slumber a stark contrast to the destruction they were rumored to be planning. "Something's not right," she muttered, her eyes scanning the surroundings for any sign of danger. There's no indication of an impending attack, no preparations for war. They don't even behave like there's even been a discussion of it. Could we be too early? Blaine suggested, his voice cautious. Or perhaps we've been misled, Asperia mused, her heart heavy with uncertainty. But why? To what end? Maybe there's more to this than meets the eye, Blaine replied, his hand instinctively resting on the hilt of his sword. We need to find answers, and quickly. If we're early, perhaps we can start the diplomacy ourselves and gain the advantage. Agreed, Asperia nodded, though I may not be the best choice, given the circumstances. And that's the end of chapter 11. Give me a long swig of this water here. And I'm just gonna take a good stretch too. My shoulders, I think, need to pop a bit. That does feel better. Been feeling a little extra tired lately, and I'm not sure why. Well, I probably do know why, but you know. I did work a little bit more than usual this week. And I haven't been feeling the best. I think Mr. Brogath is giving me his ick. Chapter 12. Asperia and Blaine ventured deeper into the Dragon City, the air shimmering with an ethereal quality as they approached its heart. The dragons they encountered seemed to be in various states of magical slumber, their immense forms wrapped in a cocoon of energy that rendered them nearly ageless. It was a sight both awe-inspiring and terrifying, for Asperia knew that even now she could not break the curse she had placed upon them so long ago. Oh no, not me giving you the ick. The ick. Asperia, a deep resonant voice, echoed through the sky, jolting her from her thoughts. Did you enjoy your long nap? A massive dragon emerged from behind one of the floating buildings, his scales glinting like obsidian in the sunlight. His eyes, ancient and knowing, locked onto Asperia's own. I must speak with you, she replied, her voice steady despite the hulking beast in front of her. But first, I want to be honest and tell you that I cannot break the curse I placed upon you. Cannot or will not? The dragon asked, his tone laced with suspicion. Cannot, Asperia insisted. Regrettably, my power has waned significantly since I first cast the spell. I am no longer strong enough to undo what I've done, or what you have done, for that matter. The dragon studied her carefully, his gaze piercing her like a blade. You expect us to believe that? After all this time, you became weaker instead of stronger? All of us here have become stronger, but not you. Believe me or not, it is the truth, Asperia stated, her voice unwavering. I did not come here seeking forgiveness. I came because I know that the world below is in danger, and I cannot protect it on my own. Your concern for our fates is touching, the dragon sneered, his anger palpable. But why should we help you? You cursed us, forced to become these monstrosities. And yet, we've resigned ourselves to our fate and have found peace here. We've no reason to aid you in your quest, whatever it may be. Because the danger that threatens the world may not spare you either, Asperia said. I understand the resentment you hold towards me, and I do not blame you for it. But if we do not stand together against this threat, there may be nothing left for any of us. Your words ring hollow, human, the dragon spat, his voice dripping with disdain. They'd long stopped seeing themselves as human, it seemed. But we shall consider your request all the same. Leave us now, and know that should we choose to hear you out, it will not be out of loyalty or affection for you, but for our own survival. Thank you, Asperia whispered as the dragon disappeared behind the floating buildings once more. She knew she had little right to ask for their assistance, but she also knew that she could not protect the world she loved without their help. Not if she wanted to have the power to spare at the end of it all to save Lucille. Asperia, Blaine murmured, placing a hand on her shoulder. Are you all right? She nodded, though her heart felt like lead within her chest. I am. We must return to Lucille and prepare for what is to come. The fate of Nethalos, the dragons, and perhaps even the world itself hangs in the balance. As Asperia and Blaine continued on, they were suddenly surrounded by at least a dozen dragons. A very different sort. Sharp eyes and lean, strong bodies. So quick, they'd barely had time to see them coming. These were not the sleeping and docile dragons they'd met so far. These were energetic, fierce, and certainly not adversaries Asperia or Blaine wanted any part of a fight with. Asperia took a deep breath, steeling herself for the confrontation. As she shared news of her weakened state and an inability to break the curse she had placed upon them, the dragons' reactions varied. Some stared at her in disbelief, their eyes narrowing with suspicion. Others simply snorted, as if they expected nothing more from the human who had cursed them. Few even bared their teeth, anger rippling through their immense forms like waves. "Silence!" roared King Salahan, his voice echoing across the city. The clamor subsided immediately, all eyes turning to him. He regarded Asperia with an unreadable expression, his massive, muscled body towering above the others. "Speak, Asperia Theris. Let's see what 2,000 years of introspection have given you. Unlike the others, we will hear what you have come to say." Sunny is up here, so that's why my model's freaking out, in case anybody's wondering. His tail is in front of the camera. "Thank you, Your Majesty," Asperia began, her voice steady despite the knot of fear lodged in her throat. "I will let my companion explain what's been happening on Nethalos." Blaine stepped forward and recounted everything that had transpired recently in Nethalos, sparing no detail. When he reached the part about Velmar still standing strong against magic, a spark of pride flickered in King Salahan's eyes. "Then my legacy has not been forgotten," he rumbled, his chest swelling with satisfaction. "Velmar remains a testament to humanity's resilience and cunning. I am proud of my people, even if my views on magic have changed." "Indeed," agreed Blaine, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. "But we need your help now more than ever. Undeath threatens the entire land of Nethalos, including Velmar, and we cannot stop him without your strength." King Salahan studied them for a long moment, his golden eyes piercing and unfathomable. Finally, he inclined his massive head, acknowledging both Asperia's sincerity and her plight. "Asperia Theris, you have come far," he said, his voice deep and resonant. "You have learned humility and compassion, and for that I bear you no ill will. Our time as dragons has taught us much as well. Perhaps the curse was a necessary step in our own evolution. You were not the only fool 2,000 years ago." "Your Majesty," Asperia interjected, "I am truly sorry for what I did to you and the others who got caught up in something they wanted no part in. I wish there was more I could do to help." "Save your apologies," Salahan said, waving a massive claw dismissively. "We have all grown wiser in our times apart. My men and I failed to stop the plot from unfolding, after all. My spies informed me of Fran's intentions, but I had no time to mobilize a proper force, and I did not know where you were to contact you. I took a small force with me to stop them. Few enough men as to not raise suspicions. We fought hard, but in the end, we were no match for mages." He paused, his expression somber. "Focus your efforts on stopping Undeath before it is too late. I will do what I can to rouse my brethren to aid in this fight, but heed my words. Many hearts have been hardened by centuries of bitterness and solitude. Others have grown lazy and satisfied with excess and luxury. Do not place your hopes too highly upon them. Dragons have learned to never be in a hurry, as you might imagine. Discussions and decisions happen slowly." "Thank you, Your Majesty," Asperia replied, her eyes glistening with unshed tears as the truth of King Salahan's role in the event became clear to her. Your support means more than you know." "Go now," King Salahan commanded, his voice softening ever so slightly. "Finish what I couldn't and defeat Frond. Remember the true reason why you fight," King Salahan advised solemnly. "Let it guide you on your path forward." With that, Asperia and Blaine bid farewell to the ancient king and began their descent from the floating city. As they left, a sense of accomplishment filled Asperia. Not only had she begun to face the consequences of her past actions, but she had also gained an understanding of the dragon's culture and their evolved connection to magic. Yet amidst their sense of achievements, a nagging unease persisted within her heart. The dragons were powerful beings who could potentially bring devastation upon the world, and despite King Salahan's assurances, there was no guarantee that all would come to their aid against undeath. Some might even be willing to aid him instead. The best they could reasonably hope for was no interference at all. "Blaine," Asperia murmured, her voice barely audible over the rush of air as they descended. "Even if we only have to deal with one of the dragons, I will still feel uneasy. Do you still think we could truly succeed in stopping undeath? I don't understand anything anymore. Even less than I did before. In 2,000 years, I've only come to understand how small I am in the universe and time." "Asperia," Blaine said firmly, his eyes meeting hers. "We've come this far, and we've already accomplished something. When you have no choice but to fight, it's best not to worry too much about how capable you are of winning. It must be fought all the same." His words stirred a fire within her, rekindling her determination and resolve. She nodded, grateful for the unwavering support of her unexpected companion. And that's the end of chapter 12. I definitely need a drink of water here. Had to be careful because Sunny likes to try to bite the book sometimes. I think Sunny was eager to be in here though because I haven't streamed since like last Saturday. It's been a week. But hey, my schedule returns to normal this week, so I'll be able to stream Tuesday, Wednesday, Saturday, Sunday once more. And tomorrow, I'll be able to stream. Sweetheart stream tomorrow. He's leaving. He says bye. Chapter 13. Asperia stared at the cursed statue of Lucille, her heart heavy with a sense of impending doom. She ran her fingers over the cold stone surface, feeling every minute detail of her lover's face etched into the unforgiving material. "Blaine," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "What if, after all is said and done, I can't save her? What if my magic isn't enough to break this curse?" He placed a comforting hand on her shoulder, his gaze steady and resolute. "I know you're scared, Asperia, but we'll find a way. I may not be able to wield magic myself, but I've seen a lot in my travels. We can't ask for help." Asperia looked up at him, finding solace in his optimism. As they stood there, surrounded by the remnants of an ancient civilization, she felt the weight of their journey pressing down upon her. The fear of failure gnawed at her insides, threatening to paralyze her. "Tell me," she implored, hoping against hope that his experience would provide the king to unlocking the secrets of the curse. "Is there a place in this new Nethelos where knowledge of magic is kept?" Blaine scratched his chin thoughtfully, his eyes distant as he recalled his travels. If I recall, there was a grand library in Velmar filled with texts that cataloged every magic known to humanity. Perhaps through studying them you can find something useful. And since you can teleport, I'm sure we can spare a bit of time before continuing our pursuit of undeath." As she considered his words, a newfound determination began to take root within her. It was a daunting task, to be sure, but one that she cannot shirk if she hopes to save Lucille and the countless others who might fall victim to Fran's wicked schemes. "Thank you, Blaine," she said quietly. "I will seek the wisdom of Velmar's texts." Asperia closed her eyes and focused on the statue before her, reaching out with her mind to trace the delicate web of magic that held her friend captive. With each passing moment, her understanding grew, and she knew that she would not falter. "Let's get to work then," Blaine said, his voice filled with quiet confidence. "I trust you know where Velmar is?" She smiled and nodded as she placed a hand on Blaine's arm, and suddenly when they were just outside Velmar's capital city, Blaine breathed a sigh of relief. Asperia smiled, understanding the reason for the sigh. "Were you worried I'd teleport in front of a bunch of Velmari soldiers? Believe me, I've not forgotten their stance toward magic. A few minutes of walking won't do us any harm." Blaine nodded. "A wise choice. Come, I'll show you where the library is. I'm on good terms with the king here, so we'll have no problem entering. The first 2 women to be married here are also close friends of mine, though they don't live in the city. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting a golden haze over the room as Hesperia gazed at Blaine with renewed admiration. His courage and determination, despite his inability to wield magic, stirred something deep within her. It was a powerful reminder of humanity's knack for perseverance, something that existed long before magic. Your willingness to help means a lot to me. Not only that, but your willingness to take up a fight against magical beings armed with only your sword. Hesperia told Blaine, her voice filled with awe. I am fortunate to have you by my side in this fight. It seems fate has given both of us the comrade we need. Blaine's cheeks flushed slightly under her praise, but he met her gaze all the same. It is I who am fortunate, Hesperia. I fought alongside mages, but I think this is the first time I've partnered up with a goddess. She laughed, acknowledging his compliment, but then furrowed her brow as she recalled another formidable obstacle they would have to face. We must not forget what a dragon is capable of, though, she warned, her tone heavy. Their strength is unparalleled, and I can't say with any degree of confidence how difficult it would be for me to subdue them. Of course, agreed Blaine solemnly, his eyes darkening with the gravity of the situation. We'll win no matter who or what decides to stand against us. We have no other choice. As Hesperia mulled over his words, she couldn't help but marvel at the bravery that seemed to emanate from him. Anyone else might assume it was recklessness or arrogance, but she could see the good intentions in the man. He was like a beacon of hope in the darkness of their struggle, never backing down from anything, no matter how impossible the odds seemed. She closed her eyes for a moment, allowing herself to draw strength from that part of her, long dormant. No matter who stood against her, she would find a way to win and save Lucille. Indeed we shall, she replied, opening her eyes and meeting his with a renewed resolve. You have my promise. Blaine nodded, gently placing his armload of books down on the table in front of them. Here are a few to get you started. Hesperia took a deep breath, her lungs filling with the scent of old parchment and worn leather that filled the room. The air was heavy with the weight of knowledge, both known and yet to be discovered. It was within these pages, she'd hoped, that they would find the key to unlocking Lucille's curse. Her voice barely more than a whisper. Let us begin. Together they turned their attention to the ancient tomes that lined the walls of the dusty library, their fingers tracing over the words as they sought answers. They would not rest until they had uncovered the truths that lay hidden beneath layers of ink and parchment. A faint breeze rustled the pages of an open tome, carrying with it the musty scent of ancient knowledge. Hesperia's eyes scanned the words on the parchment, her mind racing as she searched for the solution to Lucille's curse. The library seemed to stretch out on endlessly around her, a labyrinth of towering shelves filled with the wisdom of ages past. Hesperia, Blaine said, his voice gentle. You've read over 100 books in an hour. If you need to rest, then just say so. She shook her head. No, I can't. Not until we find a way to save Lucille. Her fingers tightened on the edge of a book, the memory of her lover's final moments carved into her heart. The image of Lucille encased in stone and surrounded by the destruction she had sought so valiantly to prevent haunted her thoughts. A bit of magic used to speed up her reading was well spent. Hesperia closed her eyes, allowing the memory to wash over her. Lucille's voice carried in her mind a whispered message of a hope and love carried on the wings of destiny. Oh, Lucille, she whispered. Lucille believed in you, Blaine said, and for what little it's worth, I believe in you too. We will find a way. Hesperia opened her eyes and looked at Blaine, offering a sigh and a nod. She realized that the key to unlocking her power lay not in the dusty tomes that surrounded them, but was instead something she would have to find within her own heart and mind. She had persevered, and she would continue to persevere. Thank you, Blaine, she murmured, a small smile playing on her lips. You remind me a little of a wise man I used to know. I wonder if he was like you in his youth. Me? Wise? Perhaps one day, he said, grinning. No need to be so humble, she teased. It seems the curse I seek to unravel is a one-type occurrence, and I'll find no knowledge here to help. So how about we finish this? She asked, determination shining in her eyes as she prepared to confront Undeath and save Lucille once and for all. As they left the library behind, Asperia felt an unshakable conviction take root within her soul. She was no longer the downtrodden girl who had been mocked and scorned by those around her. She was an invincible mage and warrior, forged in the fires of adversity, and tempered by the love of those who believed in her. Lucille, I promise you, she whispered, her voice carried away by the wind. I will bring you back. That's the end of chapter 13. We're going to jump right into chapter 14. Asperia and Blaine stood at the edge of the city, staring up at the imposing silhouette of the Stone Tribe's mountain. The air was thick with a palpable unease as they gazed upon a sight neither of them had ever imagined witnessing. Practically an army of undead. By the gods, Blaine whispered. I never thought I'd find myself back here again so soon. This place was not like this when I left. Asperia took a deep breath, the cold air chilling her lungs as she focused her mind. She couldn't afford to let fear or doubt cloud her judgment now. This was a battle they had no choice but to face head-on, together. Blaine, we'll get through this, she reassured him, her voice steady despite the twisting in her gut. You said you've been on this mountain before, haven't you? True, but last time there weren't many of these things, he replied, his eyes scanning the ranks of the undead that stretched out before them. There must be hundreds of them now. Undeath must have killed everyone in the city out of revenge for imprisoning him. The army of undead loomed over the city, their numbers overwhelming. Gaunt, skeletal figures staggered in the front lines, their ragged clothing barely clinging to their emaciated frames. Behind them were former soldiers, all clad in rusted armor, the remnants of their banners flapping in the wind like tattered ghosts. Each corpse bore the marks of its death, gaping wounds, severed limbs, and grotesque deformities. Mixed among the decaying horde were creatures of nightmare, twisted by dark magic into monstrous abominations. Hulking brutes with bulging muscles and jagged bones protruding from their flesh lumbered forward, crushing anything in their path. Winged beasts circled overhead, their shrieks a cacophony of terror echoing through the city streets. Look there, Asperia pointed to a cluster of undead near the center of the horde. Their eyes glowed with an eerie, unnatural light. Something about those is different. Then let's focus on them, Blaine said grimly. If we can take those out, maybe it'll affect the others. Only one way to find out. Asperia gripped her staff tightly, her knuckles white with strain. The weight of their task lay heavily upon her shoulders, but she refused to let it crush her spirit. Stay close to me, Blaine, and watch my back. I'll do my best to keep us both safe, she told him, her voice filled with resolve. Likewise, he replied, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. Here we go, Blaine breathed, drawing his sword. For Nethalos! With a battle cry, they charged forward into the sea of darkness, determined to carve a path through the nightmares before them. With the first clash of steel against undead bone, the battle commenced. Blaine's sword rang through the air as he cut down one enemy after another, his movements fluid and precise. Asperia, her staff held firmly in her hands, sent spells flying into the heart of the undead horde. Together they formed a whirlwind of destruction, leaving broken bones and shattered bones in their wake. Broken bodies and shattered bones in their wake. Asperia, Blaine called out, his voice strained with effort. Don't use too much magic. Right, she replied between rapid breaths, her eyes darting from one foe to the next, her mind racing to calculate each move before it happened. She knew that conserving her magic was important, but seeing the relentless waves of undead bearing down on them made it difficult not to unleash the full force of her power. Blaine, watch your left, she cried, catching the sight of a skeletal warrior raising its sword to strike at him. Thanks, he shouted back, parrying the blow just in time and returning the favor with a swift, decisive slash. The skeletal figure crumbled to the ground, joining the ever-growing pile of vanquished foes. As the hours dragged on, exhaustion began to creep into their limbs. Their once fluid movements grew sluggish, weighed down by the fatigue that threatened to consume them. Still, they fought on, unwilling to let this monstrous army stand in their way. Once in a while, they earned a few minutes' rest before encountering the next wave. Asperia, how are you holding up? Blaine asked, as he fended off another attacker. Better than I thought I would after 2,000 years of sleep, she admitted, wiping sweat from her brow. Her body ached with weariness, but her spirit remained unbroken. How about you? I'm fine, he replied, flashing her a weary smile that betrayed his words. But we can't keep this up forever. We have to find a way to break through and reach the necromancer controlling them. Agreed, she said, gritting her teeth as she forced herself to focus. They couldn't afford to falter now, not when the fate of so many rested on their shoulders. Asperia! Blaine called out suddenly, his voice urgent. I think I see an opening. Cover me. Go, she shouted, sending a torrent of spells at the undead forces, creating a temporary barrier between them and Blaine as he dashed forward. As Blaine closed the distance, Asperia continued to hold back the relentless tide of undead warriors, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew that if they could defeat the mage controlling the horde, they would be one step closer to victory. But it was a dangerous gambit, and she feared for Blaine's safety as she charged headlong into the darkness. For a moment, she'd forgotten that he was a mortal man without any powers to speak of. How was he still fighting this ferociously was beyond her understanding. Stay safe, she whispered under her breath, her eyes never leaving him. We'll get through this. Blaine's eyes widened with shock as he stood over one of the undead, and he hesitated a moment before speaking. I knew this man, he admitted, his voice heavy with sorrow. He was the guard at the city entrance. No one deserves this fate. Then let's put an end to it, Asperia said, her gaze fixed on the approaching horde. If we fail to stop him here, this will be the fate of all Nethalos. Right, Blaine agreed, steeling himself for the battle ahead. The clash of steel against rotting flesh and bone echoed through the air as they fought side by side, their movements synchronized as though they had years of practice. Their breaths came in ragged gasps, and sweat mingled with blood as they pushed back against the relentless onslaught of the undead. Watch your back, Blaine warned, parrying a strike from a ghoul that had snuck up behind her. Thanks, she grunted, sending a surge of magical energy through her staff, incinerating the creature in a burst of flames. The realization had settled on her by now that she had lost most of the physical prowess she'd gained thousands of years before. Atrophy had not spared her simply because she'd been so fit. She was still stronger and faster than any human could hope to be, but paled in comparison to her former self. Despite their best efforts, the sheer number of the undead army continued to press in on them, threatening to crush them beneath their combined might. Blaine's muscles screamed in protest as he deflected blow after blow, his unusually swift and precise strikes growing slow and clumsy from exhaustion. Have you noticed? Asperia shouted over the cacophony of battle, her eyes darting around the battlefield as she searched for any signs of weakness in the undead ranks. Noticed what? Blaine asked, gritting his teeth as a particularly strong undead managed to land a glancing blow on his arm, tearing through his armor and drawing blood. Most of them seem to be focused on you, she observed, her brow furrowed in concern. Damn it, Blaine spat, kicking away the offended undead before it could strike again. Maybe because they blame me for helping free Priscilla? Maybe they think we freed on death. We'll figure out the reason later. Just focus on the battle, Asperia urged. We can't afford to be overwhelmed now. However, reality was finally catching up to them. Blaine's movements became more reckless, as it seems the only thing keeping him on his feet was a desire to avenge the dead and protect others. He took increasingly dangerous risks, diving into the heart of the horde and leaving himself exposed to their relentless attacks. Blaine! Asperia cried out when she saw him stumble under a particularly vicious swipe from an undead warrior, his armor doing little to protect him under the force of the blow. I'm fine! Keep moving forward! Blaine shouted, his voice filled with pain as he struggled to fend off the encroaching undead. But Asperia refused to abandon him, unleashing a torrent of magic at the horde, pushing them back just enough for her to reach Blaine's side. It was clear how close he was to his limit. Blaine's body trembled, blood seeping through the gaps in his battered armor. Despite his injuries, he continued to swing his sword, each strike weaker than the last. Asperia's heart ached at the sight of him, but she refused to let her emotions cloud her judgment. She knew that if they were to survive this onslaught, she needed to act decisively. Blaine, she gasped, I can't let you die for my sake. This isn't just your fight, he grunted, parrying another blow from an undead attacker. All the same, she whispered, scanning the ranks of the undead for any sign of weakness. As her eyes locked onto their hollow, lifeless gazes, an idea began to form in her mind. Lucille would not approve of her letting a man like Blaine to die to conserve power. "Blaine," she said firmly, "you will want to stand behind me." "Go on then," he replied, his voice strained with pain. Gathering her strength, Hesperia unleashed a powerful spell. The air around them crackled with energy as she channeled her magic into a brilliant, blinding light that enveloped the entire battlefield in front of them. The undead army froze in place, their decaying flesh sizzling and smoking under the intense heat. As the light began to fade, so too did the undead horde. One by one, they crumbled to ash, drifting away on the wind like leaves in the autumn breeze. The consequences of using such a spell weighed heavy on Hesperia's conscience. It drained a valuable portion of her magical reserves, though she did not know how much. "Sorry, Hesperia," Blaine breathed, gazing at the now emptied battlefield in disbelief. "I'd hoped that wouldn't be necessary." "None of that. You did far more than any powerless human should have been able to. Are you all right?" she asked urgently, her concern for him outweighing her own exhaustion. "Better than I was," he admitted, wincing as he attempted to stand. "But we both need to recover." "Agreed, but especially you," she murmured, helping him to his feet. Together they found a sheltered alcove amidst the rubble of the city, and Hesperia set to work tending to Blaine's wounds. She raised her hands, covering his body in a soft, magical glow, sealing those still bleeding. Hesperia and Blaine set out once more, following the trail of magic that led up the mountainside. The wind bit at their skin with icy teeth, a harbinger of the storm brewing on the horizon. Dark clouds gathered overhead, casting a somber pall over the landscape. "Are you certain the source is at the summit?" Blaine asked, through chattered teeth, his breath fogging in the frigid air. "It seems like a strange place for undeath to return, considering he was held prisoner there for so long." "Magic does not lie. There is a necromancer at the summit," Hesperia replied, her gaze fixed on the faintly glowing runes etched into her staff. "Of that, I am certain. We must press on." Her voice was steady, but inside, she too felt the tendrils of doubt creeping in. The terrain grew steeper with each step, the rocky ledges giving way to sheer cliffs and narrow ice-covered ledges. She leaned heavily on her staff, struggling not to fall in the deep snow. "Watch your footing," Blaine warned, his eyes scanning the treacherous path ahead. "One misstep could send us plummeting to our doom." "Thank you for stating the obvious," Hesperia muttered sarcastically under her breath. She knew he meant well, but she couldn't help be feeling irked by his protectiveness, as if she were some fragile girl in need of coddling. She had faced far worse than a treacherous mountain pass, after all. I guess these. Oh. I might have to do it again. Hey, wait. Maybe not. Oh. A feeling you have before you sneeze is terrible. And of course, the feeling after is you try to keep your nose from running. Immediately, she caught herself. In 2,000 years, old wounds of the heart had refused to close. She still had that same bitter chip on her shoulder. The memories of those who had laughed and pointed at her when she was crippled and weak were still as vivid as yesterday. It was not Blaine's fault that she had those memories. He'd been nothing but kind to her, who was hardly better than a stranger to him. "Sorry," she said. "I say things I don't mean sometimes. You'd think I've gotten better at it by now." Blaine smiled. Just proves you're human after all." As they ascended, the temperature continued to drop, and the wind howled like a beast in agony. Hesperia's finger grew numb, and she could feel the cold seeping deep into her bones. She'd never been to a place this cold. Even Blaine, who had seemed impervious to discomfort, began to shiver violently. "Hesperia," he gasped, his face pale and drawn. "I don't think I can go much further. I can barely make it up this mountain before, but it's even worse at night." "Rest for a moment," she urged him, concern etching lines across her brow. "But we cannot linger long." It was impossible for her to understand what he was experiencing. Her body had changed so much when she touched the sphere that she no longer experienced physical discomforts the same as a normal human. Blaine nodded, sinking to the ground with a weary sigh. As he did so, Hesperia noticed the dark stain of blood seeping through his hastily healed wounds. "You're still bleeding," she sighed, reaching out a hand. So many of these have reopened. A lousy job on the part of the healer. Priscilla would scold me, and I'd deserve it. I'd heal you more fully, Blaine. It only takes a few minutes. No, he protested weakly, attempting to wave her away. Save your strength for the monster that lies ahead. Stubborn fool, she chided softly, brushing aside his feeble resistance. She pressed her palm to his flesh, and in a warm golden light suffused the air. The pain in Blaine's face faded as the healing magic knit together torn flesh and mended broken bones. When she was finished, he stared at her in wonder. Thank you, he whispered. You didn't have to do that. I could say the same of you, she replied, offering him a small smile. Yet here we are. Some battles you have no choice to win, right? As they resumed their climb, the storm broke upon them with renewed fury. Snow swirled around them like a living thing, obscuring their vision and numbing their senses. Yet they pressed on. Biting cold gnawed at Asperia's bones, but she gritted her teeth and persevered. Blaine, though healed, was far worse off, out his breath a cloud of white in the frigid air. The mountain seemed to loom over them with a malevolent intent, casting a long shadow that seemed to stretch out like a grasping claw. Asperia looked at Blaine with concern. You can't go on like this. You'll freeze to death before we even reach the top. I don't feel the cold the same as you do. You have to tell me if you need a bit of help from my magic. As he started to reply, she interrupted him. I've never met a man as stubborn as you before. You'd freeze to death before you said a word, wouldn't you? She shook her head, raising both hands and casting a reddish glow over the man's flesh. It seemed to linger, though faint. Instantly he was warmed. The oppressive mountain now felt no different than any other chilly winter day. Not exactly comfortable, but easily manageable. Thank you, he murmured, his gratitude evident. Your magic really is something. Let's keep moving, she replied, determined not to dwell on her dwindling reserves of magic. As the pair pressed forward, the path grew steeper and the wind howled around them like a ravenous beast seeking to devour their resolve. Asperia, Blaine shouted over the wind's fury. I think there's a cave up ahead. We could take shelter there. Lead the way, she replied, struggling to keep her footing on the treacherous slope. The cave's entrance was barely visible through the swirling snow, but Blaine's keen eyes had managed to discern it. They stumbled inside, grateful for respite from the storm. Asperia, we should rest here a moment, Blaine suggested, his face betraying his exhaustion. Even if we can handle the cold, we can't see a thing out there right now. I'm sure your magic could do something about it, but a bit of patience could achieve the same thing. You're right, she reluctantly agreed, sinking down into the cold stone floor. A surge of guilt suddenly invaded her chest. Blaine, she whispered as anxiety chugged at her consciousness. You think long life is a gift or a curse? A curse for most, I'd imagine, he said, his voice heavy with fatigue and emotion, no doubt recalling his own memories. Even now, I'm still not sure, she said, doubt in her voice. Blaine mumbled something incoherent before falling asleep on the cave floor. Asperia imagined a comfortable sleeping mat in her mind, bringing it forth into reality. She lifted Blaine's body with ease, managed to avoid waking him, sliding the mat underneath before lowering him down again. She'd stay awake and use a touch of magic to replenish her energy. 2,000 years was plenty of sleep already. She decided to let Blaine sleep until dawn. The necromancer would already be aware of her presence, and she could tell they had not fled. He would be patiently waiting for them. When Blaine awoke, the storm had abated, leaving behind a world draped in pristine white. The sun had risen, casting a golden light upon the glistening snow, and the mountaintop was finally within reach. Prepare yourself, Asperia said. We're close. That's the end of chapter 14. I need to take a quick drink. Oh, my nose itches so bad. It's been itching this whole time. I swear whenever I narrate, whenever I do a narration stream, my nose itches like crazy. Alright, so we just have a few chapters left. We're on chapter 15 now. Blaine and Asperia ascended the final stretch of the treacherous mountaintop, their breaths heavy but determined. As they reached the summit, Blaine's sword glinted under the sunlight, while Asperia clung to her wooden staffs for support. Before them sprawled another vast army of undead creatures, their eyes glowing with sinister hunger. Undeath should be here, Blaine whispered to Hesperia, his voice laced with confusion and a flicker of fear. However, as the pair inched forward, they soon realized it was not Undeath who had been puppeteering this abhorrent force. It was a human man, his hands weaving intricate patterns in the air as he commanded the undead legion. "Istall Regs!" Blaine shouted, struggling to find the words. But why? Blaine's eyes narrowed, his expression clouded with disappointment and betrayal. The man he clearly had once considered an ally now stood before them as an adversary. In that moment, Blaine made a decision. "Hesperia," he said, his voice low and urgent. "Please step back. I need to handle Istall alone." "Are you sure?" Hesperia's concern was evident in her lilac eyes. Could this man really handle a mage? She didn't want to leave Blaine's side, but she trusted his judgment. "Please," he insisted, mustering a reassuring smile. "I'm afraid I have to insist. This isn't about conserving your magic. It is a personal matter I need to settle." Hesperia hesitated, then nodded. She knew Blaine had faced countless formidable foes in his travels, protecting those he cared about. She retreated to a safer distance, watching the unfolding conflict between two former friends. "Ah, Blaine Grave," Istall called out, his tone mimicking confidence. "Even though my target wasn't you, I had a feeling you would show up here again." "Give me one good reason why I shouldn't cut you down where you stand, Istall." "Really? That seems fine on my end." "I don't know. Let me look at it. I don't know. It's like slightly behind, but that's pretty normal." Blaine growled, his tip on the hilt of his sword unyielding. "How could you do this to these people? You're a doctor." Istall dodged the question, a cruel glint in his eyes. "You'll have to make it to me in order to cut me down. Can you do it?" As Blaine prepared himself for the imminent battle against Istall and his undead guards, he couldn't help but wonder how it came to this. What could have pushed Istall to betray them? Was it power, fear, or something else entirely? Oh, okay. I don't know. I don't see anything. I've been monitoring OBS for a while, so. "Stay strong." Oh. Hesperia watched from afar, her heart pounding in her chest as she witnessed a man Blaine had apparently admired standing against them. She knew she must trust Blaine, but she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Istall's betrayal than met the eye. "Stay strong, Blaine," Hesperia whispered into the frigid air, her breath visible in the cold. With a swift motion, Blaine unsheathed his sword and charged at Istall. The necromancer stepped back, raising his hands to summon a barrier of dark energy that shimmered between them. Blaine's blade met the barrier with a shower of sparks, but he refused to be deterred. "Is this all you have, Istall?" Blaine shouted, his voice strained with effort as he continued to strike against the magical shield. Istall's lips curved in a sardonic smile. "You always were a stubborn one, Blaine," he replied, "but I expected nothing less from you. Do you think I'm here because I want to be?" Pushing his frustration aside, Blaine focused on the task at hand. He knew he had to find a way to break through Istall's defenses if he had any hope of stopping him. Calling upon his inner reserves of strength, Blaine swung his sword in an intricate pattern, executing his own unique technique that repelled magic. As the sword cut through the air, it left a trail of shimmering light in its path. As the pattern completed, it shattered the barrier before Istall could react. The necromancer stumbled backward, shock and disbelief written across his face. "Impossible!" Istall breathed, trying to regain his footing. Blaine lunged forward, his eyes narrowing as he advanced toward Istall. The necromancer quickly regained his composure, raising his hands once more. However, instead of casting another barrier or unleashing a deadly spell upon Blaine, Istall summoned a small horde of skeletal minions that emerged from the deep snow. They rose, their bony fingers clawing at the earth as they surrounded Blaine. "I've cut down 100 of this level already," Blaine muttered to himself, his sword poised and ready to cut through the undead. It dawned on him then that Istall hadn't used any lethal spells against him. He could have easily called forth a barrage of dark energy or cursed Blaine with irreversible hexes, but he hadn't. Necromancers didn't need to fight this way. Wait, Blaine said, his voice softening as realization washed over him. You wouldn't do this willingly. Why not let us help you? The necromancer hesitated for a moment, his hands faltering in their incantations. His eyes met Blaine's, filled with a mixture of desperation and regret. The skeletal minions froze in place, their hollow gazes fixed upon the two former friends, helpless to act without being commanded. Blaine, Isthal began, his voice cracking with emotion. I never wanted to come to this. I didn't want to fight you or anyone else. Then why, Blaine asked, lowering his sword slightly, why betray us? Why work with undeath? It was the only way to protect everyone, Isthal whispered, his gaze falling to the ground. Undeath promised me power, enough to keep our people safe from the dragons and other threats. It wasn't my choice to sacrifice the Stone Tribe. Undeath already killed and raised them out of revenge for imprisoning him. But if I can make a deal with him to spare others... Power comes at a price, Isthal, Blaine replied, his voice heavy with disappointment. And sometimes that price is too high to pay. And you have no way of making him keep that promise. Perhaps you're right, Isthal conceded, his shoulders slumping in defeat. But what choice did I have, Blaine? We live in a world with the strong prey upon the weak. I thought I could change that, at least for a few, even if it meant sacrificing my own soul. Strength isn't just about power, Isthal, Blaine said, his voice firm but compassionate. As Isthal considered Blaine's words, Asperia watched from a distance, her heart swelling with hope. She knew that if anyone could reach Isthal and bring him back from the brink, it was Blaine, a man more capable of anyone she'd ever seen with a sword, recognizing when not to use it. Enough, Blaine sighed, sheathing his sword and taking a step toward Isthal. I don't want to fight you, Isthal. Neither of us want that. I am not your enemy. Asperia held her breath, observing the scene from her vantage point among the craggy rocks. She could see the tension in Blaine's muscles as he tried to reach out to his former friend. She couldn't help but wonder if things might have gone differently if she'd done the same. Talk, Isthal scoffed, his voice brittle with bitterness. What is there to talk about? You're doing what you must, Blaine, and so must I. What you must, Blaine repeated. Isthal, you're working with undeath. The very force that threatens everything you hold dear. How many of these stone tribesmen did you treat when they had the plague? Undeath promised me. Isthal wanted to repeat his justification again, but couldn't, his eyes dark with shame. Undeath isn't to be trusted, Blaine reminded him gently, the wind whipping his hair around his face as he stood firm in his conviction. As soon as you've served your purpose, he'll throw you away like he did all these people. That is Asperia with you, is it not? I could say the same for her. Do you have any idea what she did to them? Cross her and she may do the same to you. Asperia, Blaine glanced toward the rocks where she was standing, his eyes softening. She is not the goddess they made her out to be. She's just a human like you and I, who had happy days and then had other days that were not so happy. And in the end, she made a mistake, just as you have and just as I have. I see, Isthal whispered, his expression faltering as he looked between Blaine and Asperia, tears beginning to well in his eyes. All these people, they did not deserve this. They did not deserve to have their bodies used as weapons. I did treat many of them. Many of them welcomed me and called me a friend. What happens next is a choice, Isthal, Blaine replied, his voice filled with warmth and understanding. You're still the doctor I knew who tried so hard to save a young woman who was a stranger to him. Being a necromancer doesn't stop you from choosing that part of yourself. It never has. There's no magic in this world that can't be used for good. Blaine! Asperia emerged from the rocks, her skirt rustling softly in the wind, her eyes shimmering with tears. I believe Isthal can help us directly if that's a choice he'd like to make. He can help us stop undeath and avenge these people. They can still be saved, but not by undeath. Asperia. Isthal's gaze flickered toward her, his face etched with uncertainty. Do you truly think that there's hope for me, even after everything I have done? She smiled at him. For both our sakes. I hope so. He returned her smile, but after that brief moment, his face became grim again. Undeath's hold in the area must be severed, Isthal said, his voice barely audible above the wind. We must break his enchantments and return the undead to their rest, or may he simply raise them again, even from afar. Asperia nodded, her eyes narrowing as she considered their options. We'll need to take the fight to him. Agreed, Blaine chimed in, gripping the hilt of his sword. Once he's dealt with, these people can finally rest. Indeed, Estelle added. I may not be thousands of years old, but I have the collective knowledge of my people. I know a thing or two about necromancy and how to counter it. Then it's settled, Asperia said. We'll locate him quickly and finish this. Let's make sure we're prepared, Blaine suggested, his eyes scanning the horizon. Rest tonight. We'll need all our strength for the battle ahead. Estelle nodded, his heart heavy with the burden of his actions. I hope you both know I don't take your forgiveness lightly. I promise to do everything in my power to make amends. We know, Asperia replied, her hand resting gently on Estelle's shoulder. And together, we'll make things right. Both of us. With those words, they descended the mountain. That's the end of chapter 15. We're on chapter 16. Hello, Ariana Davis. How are you doing? Sorry if it takes me a bit to respond in between reading chapters. I try not to interrupt myself too much during the chapters. Feel like it's a little bit more immersive that way. I don't know. Something like that. Okay. We got a couple chapters left and the epilogue to go. We're on chapter 16 now. As they stood in front of Asperia's tome, she couldn't help but acknowledge the irony. It was fitting that the threads of Fran's necromancy would be traced back to here. This is where everything began, and where it would end. Her residual power that bled off her body during her long sleep had accumulated throughout the area, making it an ideal place for a mage to cultivate power. He'd played a clever trick on her, using another necromancer to throw her off the trail, giving him time to make his own preparations. One of the worst things about it was the fact that Asperia didn't even understand why the Academy would build such a tomb for her to act as her resting place, even incorporating Lucille to stand above the entrance to greet her when she emerged. This tomb was the last thing standing in this entire area. They hadn't even rebuilt the Academy itself, and yet they built this tomb for her. Wasn't she the cause of the destruction? Hadn't she wronged all of them? Despite all of this, the place seemed to stand as a tribute to her. Taking a deep breath, she took the first step inside, followed by Blaine and Estelle. The air hung heavy with the scent of an ancient decay as they entered the tomb. A dimly lit chamber stretched out before them, its walls adorned with intricate carvings that seemed to dance in the flickering torchlight. Eerie shadows played across the floor, leaving no corner untouched by the darkness. Asperia, Blaine whispered. His voice echoed through the vast space. This place feels wrong. I know, she replied, her eyes darting around nervously. He's had time to prepare. That will be a problem, Estelle said. However, we cannot afford to fail. Together, the unlikely trio ventured deeper into the tomb, their steps echoing off the cold stone floor. It was clear they were not alone. The very air seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy that left their skin prickling with unease. Stay close, Blaine warned, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. Who knows what kind of traps he's laid? They won't save him, Asperia replied, her voice strained but resolute. Her mind remained sharp as ever, even if her magic had not. As they delved deeper into the tomb, the air grew colder and an oppressive weight settled upon them. Asperia gritted her teeth, struggling to draw upon her magic. She could feel it there, a vast ocean of power, but it was like trying to grasp water with her bare hands. The effort left her trembling, beads of sweat forming on her brow despite the chill. Being in this place made her feel even weaker. How had she not realized this sooner? She was at her weakest here. Was this place intended to suppress her power, or could it be Fran's doing? Asperia? Estelle asked, concern etched on his face as she noticed her companion's distress. I'm fine, Asperia lied between clenched teeth, forcing herself to keep moving. We cannot afford to delay. Blaine frowned, his gaze flickering between the two before he sighed and nodded. He knew that Asperia was in no condition to wield her full power, but he also understood that they had little choice, and that it would not get any better with time. Very well, he agreed. Keep your eye. Blaine abruptly drew his sword, facing the two figures just ahead of them. Asperia and Estal braced themselves, readying for spells. Wait! A voice shouted, causing Blaine to lower his sword immediately. It was at that moment that Priscilla and a large woman appeared, as if summoned by their determination. The woman with her, who appeared to be that of the Stone Tribe, stood tall, her powerful frame a testament to the strength of her Stone Tribe lineage. Her expression was grim, though she forced an unconvincing smile as she drew closer. In stark contrast, Priscilla radiated a gentle warmth, her delicate features and kind eyes reflecting her empathetic nature. How are you in that form? Asperia asked, placing her hands on Priscilla's shoulders as if she doubted the woman before her was even real. I can only maintain it briefly through hundreds of years of practice. Though with the concentration of magic in this tome, it's almost effortless. This is Hildine. She has her own reasons for hunting Frond. Your aid is more than welcome, Hildine. Blaine has spoken highly of you. She trailed off, her thoughts suddenly pulled into the significance of Priscilla's learned ability. Then, in theory, Asperia muttered to herself, lost in thought. Your fight is our fight, Hildine declared, her voice deep and resolute. Undeath has taken too much from us. Indeed, Priscilla added quietly, her gaze steady and unwavering. We will stand together and put an end to this. Welcome, friends, Blaine said, offering a grateful nod. Let's not waste any more time, Estelle urged, sensing Asperia's continued struggle to maintain her composure. We must confront Undeath and put an end to his nightmare. Agreed, Hildine rumbled, her hand tightening around the hilt of her strange weapon. Then let us press onward, Asperia said, her voice barely a whisper as she drew upon every ounce of determination she possessed. Hildine's weapon, the artifact she had stolen with Priscilla's help, was a spear of immense power. The shaft was made of an obsidian-like material that seemed to drink in the darkness around it. Intricate, silver runic patterns snaked up its length, glowing faintly with an otherworldly intensity. The spearhead itself was a jagged, crystalline structure that pulsed with an electric energy, like a storm trapped within its core. The lightning spear was said to be capable of channeling with raw fury of dragons, and its destructive potential was only matched by the burden it was placed on its wielder. Impressive weapon, Blaine commented. It suits you even better than the axes. I'm not sure I could even lift that thing. Courtesy of the dragons, Hildine said, prompting a cough from Priscilla. I'll give it back when I'm done using it, she added, as though that clarified anything. Hildine, are you aware? Blaine started, but Hildine stopped him from finishing the question. I know what he's done, Blaine. My lover and now my people. Only one of us leaves this tome, Hildine said, her voice quivering with the rage she'd been trying to suppress. Blaine only nodded. Perhaps after all this is done, I can show you Arthurus. You deserve at least a short rest before you move on. Perhaps we all do, Asperia added. This is one of the women you spoke of, Blaine. I'm sorry about Marylander and everything else, she said, addressing Hildine. It's not your apology to give, Hildine said coldly. Asperia nodded, struggling to keep the surging guilt within her from bubbling to the surface. If only she'd finished this 2,000 years ago. If only she hadn't turned them into immortal beasts. Then this woman's lover would still be... She shuddered, wiping away the tears from her eyes. No more. Not one more, she said, whispering under her breath. As they closed in on Undeath, Hildine tested her grip on the spear, feeling its unnerving hum resonate through her very bones. She knew that wielding the lightning spear required tremendous strength and resilience, lest its power overwhelm and destroy those who tried. Even for a member of the Stone Tribe, it was a strain. But for Marylander and her people, Hildine would bear this burden and unleash its wrath upon their enemy. Staying close, Blaine instructed, his eyes scanning the path ahead for any threats. Asperia and Isthel will provide support from afar. Hildine, Priscilla, and I will engage Undeath directly. Healing magic should be effective against him as a weapon.
Understood, Hildine grunted, adjusting her grip on the lightning spear. Her heart pounded with anticipation and nervous energy. In her mind, she repeated a silent mantra. For Merryweather. For my people. Remember to keep your emotions in check, Priscilla whispered to Hildine, placing a reassuring hand on the Stone Tribe warrior's arm. I will use my magic to make sure we're all aware of one another's next move. He won't anticipate that level of teamwork. Of course, Hildine replied, nodding solemnly. She had to protect them all, not just herself. For her, this was as much about justice as it was vengeance. At last, they reached the end of the tomb. What waited for them was nothing like what they'd expected. Where the other dragons were radiant and beautiful, this one did not look alive. His skeleton was mostly exposed, and his rotten flesh hung loose from its frame. He was surrounded by undead, not simple raised soldiers, but powerful golems of different shapes and sizes. He hissed, and a black smoke escaped his mouth. Don't breathe that! Priscilla shouted, casting a bright golden light from her hands that burned away the dark magic. Ah, Priscilla. Asperia. My old friends, he choked. Take a good, long look. This is what you did to me. Frond, Asperia started, but was interrupted by Priscilla. Don't listen to him, Asperia. He's the one who turned the other mages against you. King Salahan ran him through with his sword. I watched him die, but he resurrected himself with his own power. None of it would have happened if not for him. You're as beautiful as ever. Say, did you ever tell Asperia that you were in love with Lucille, too? No room in your heart for me. A pity. Yeah, R.I.P. I started a coughing fit in the middle of that sentence. I think it might be good now. Goodness gracious. This cough will not give up now. That's probably where I sneezed earlier. I think I've had a bit of a cold brewing. Here we go. I could have made you happy. If anything, all of this is your fault.
Skill issue.
Skill issue, thanks. Priscilla turned her gaze from Asperia just as she tried to read the woman's face. Are you sure it wasn't Priscilla who wanted to get rid of you, Asperia? You were a competition after all. Shut up, Priscilla whispered. Your words are poison. Enough talk, Hildine roared, leaping through the air and straight into the wall of undead creatures protecting him. The battle commenced with a deafening crack as Hildine thrust the lightning spear forward, unleashing a bolt of lightning that tore through the undead ranks. The air around them sizzled with raw power. Priscilla, now! Hildine shouted, providing an opening for her friend to weave her magic into the fray. Priscilla's eyes glowed a soft blue as she reached out with her mind, sensing the emotions of those around her, fear, anger, sorrow. She channeled these feelings, amplifying them with the undead, to sow chaos among their ranks, scrambling Undeath's influence. Asperia, we need your help, Estal yelled from behind, his own magic at the ready. I'll try to seize control of one of them at a time. Asperia nodded, drawing upon her weakened powers to unleash a torrent of arcane energy that surged through the battlefield, decimating the skeletal remains of Undeath's weaker minions. Even in her weakened state, the strength of her power was almost unimaginable. Keep pushing, Blaine urged, his sword slicing through the dark forces with precision. We can't let the opening Hildine made go to waste. Each member of the group fought tirelessly, their individual strengths combining to form an unstoppable force against their enemy. Hildine's lightning spear carved a path through the darkness, its electric fury clashing with the cold shadows of undeath. Priscilla's empathy magic continued to destabilize their foes, while Istal provided support by seizing one dead at a time to fight against its former master. The moment Undeath took control back, he seized another. "Stay strong," Hildine growled, gritting her teeth against the immense strain of the weapon. As they pressed onward, the lines between friend and foe blurred amidst the chaos, each strike bringing them closer to victory or oblivion. But united by their love and loss, Hildine, Priscilla, Blaine, Asperia, and Istal refused to bend in the face of darkness, and together they would finish what had been started so long ago. One of the undead stepped out of the shadows, wielding a mighty bow. He drew it back with incredible strength and released a massive arrow with hooks coming from every direction. At first, his aim seemed clumsy. His arrow flew by Asperia, seemingly missing her. It grazed her leg, leaving an unsightly gash. "Are you all right?" Lane shouted. "It's nothing," she said, healing the wound almost instantly. "Don't get distracted." Her hand shot to her hip and her eyes went wide. She looked around frantically. A sudden flash in the darkness caught Blaine's eye. A figure cloaked in shadow was making its way toward the Starlight blade, the legendary weapon forged from the fallen star, Asperia's last hope to save Lucille. "Asperia!" he shouted over the chaos. "It's trying to take the blade!" "Stop them!" she cried, her voice strained from exertion, as dozens of small undead suddenly leaped onto her, weighing her down in an attempt to restrain her only briefly, just long enough to steal her blade. Hildine's lightning spear crackled with energy as she continued to fight off Undeath's forces, the power within the artifact thrumming dangerously close to reaching its limit. She began to help Asperia tear away the undead swarming her. Blaine raced toward the encroaching figure, his heart pounding furiously in his chest. He wouldn't let the blade fall into enemy hands, not when their victory hinged upon its safekeeping. As he reached the Starlight blade, the mysterious figure extended its hand to grasp it. It became clear in this moment this was Undeath's intention from the very beginning. Blaine roared, surging a hair's breadth ahead of the undead minion, snatching the blade before the figure could touch it, both their hands reaching it nearly at once. The weapon hummed with celestial energy, its silver edges shimmering like the darkness. Runes glowed along the length of the blade, pulsating. The figure recoiled, shielding its eyes. With the Starlight blade now in hand, Blaine felt a surge of power coursing through his veins. He tried to drop the blade, but it's bound his hand to the hilt. "Blaine, drop it! Hurry!" Asperia screamed. "Throw it to me! Something! You can't hold on to it! It'll kill you!" As Blaine struggled to release the sword, a sudden tremor shook the tomb. A portal materialized out of thin air, its swirling vortex threatening to swallow everything in its path. It enveloped Blaine completely and began to close on him. "Blaine!" Hildine's voice boomed over the cacophony, Priscilla's eyes widened in horror, her magic faltering for a heart-stopping moment. Asperia vaporized the undead that had swarmed her in a surge of awesome power, then rushed forward, in a flash of speed that could hardly be tracked by the human eye, extending her hand to dispel the strange magic that appeared in hopes of reclaiming the sword. An explosion from the blade sent her flying across the ground. "What is this?" Blaine shouted, fighting to release the hilt of the Starlight blade as it began to pull him into the portal. The others cried out in anguish, their voices barely audible above the war of the vortex. "Blaine!" Asperia screamed. Whatever force was responsible, she could not overpower it. "Fight on!" he called back, his body now fully enveloped by the magic, making him slowly disappear before their very eyes. "Your enemy is that way!" As he pointed to Undeath, Blaine was yanked into the portal. The vortex collapsed in on itself, leaving behind a gaping void where he once stood. The silence that followed was deafening, the shock and loss palpable even within the tomb. "Blaine," Asperia whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "Not you too." Hildine's heart thundered in her chest, her breath ragged as she gripped the lightning spear with determination. Blaine's disappearance had only served to fuel her rage, and she lost herself in it. Yet one more thing this monster had taken from her. She glanced at Priscilla. The gentlewoman tightened her fists, nodding at Hildine. "Let's finish this," Hildine growled, her voice booming through the tomb. Agreed, Priscilla whispered, her magic reaching out to Estelle and Asperia, bolstering their courage beyond what would normally be possible. They felt invincible. They charged at an undeath, their combined fury a force to be reckoned with. Hildine swung the lightning spear, arcs of electricity crackling around its tip like a storm unleashed. Undeath hissed, its twisted form recoiling from the powerful weapon. It ends here, Hildine roared, thrusting the spear at the abomination. Golden light erupted from Priscilla's body as she healed the wounds of her allies and enveloped Undeath's decaying body form in blinding light. Undeath screeched, a guttural sound that reverberated within the tomb, striking the very foundations of the ancient structure. It lunged at Hildine, its skeletal claws slashing through the air towards her. The stone warrior parried the attack with her spear, the sparks flying as metal met unbreakable bone. Is this all a legendary dragon is capable of? Hildine taunted, gritting her teeth as she pushed against the creature's strength. I will grind your bones to dust! Priscilla weaved her way between Hildine and Undeath, her hands glow intensifying as she channeled her magic. She struck the creature squarely in the chest, sending it staggering it backward. Give up, Frond! My power is the perfect counter to yours! She cried out, her voice filled with a passion that belied her gentle nature. Hildine and Priscilla's relentless assault continued, for those they had lost and the world they wanted to protect. Estelle provided support, seizing control of any Undeath's minion that tried to attack them, while Asperia summoned the waning strength she had left to decide the battle. Without her sword, the source of her power, her magic lived on borrowed time. This is over, Hildine bellowed, raising the lightning spear above her head. The air crackled with energy as the weapon drew power from the very essence of the storm. Priscilla, now! She commanded, her heart pounding in the anticipation of the decisive blow. For Lucille, Priscilla murmured, her hands glowing brighter than ever before. She thrust it forward, an arrow, focused beam of pure light piercing through the darkness. Strike true! Hildine cried out, bringing the spear down with all her might, taking advantage of the opening Priscilla had created in his magical armor. The spear collided with Undeath's form, its electrified tip searing through the abomination's flesh. Priscilla's light followed suit, enveloping the creature in a blinding radiance that seemed to burn away the very shadows that clung to it. Is this all the power that you can muster? Undeath said, his body rumbling with his sinister laughter. You've underestimated my power. His body began to pulse with dark energy. A counterattack was imminent. Their most powerful attack had done nothing. Asperia appeared in front of him, grasping the sides of his head with her bare hands. Her eyes glow with an unfathomable arcane power. You have underestimated mine, Asperia said, nullifying Undeath's frightening counterattack before it could be launched, suppressing his power to almost nothing. No longer holding back even in her weakened state, her power dwarfed his beyond imagining. With no means of defending himself, the attack from Hildine and Priscilla overwhelmed him. A terrible scream echoed through the tomb as Undeath's body disintegrated, its essence consumed by the combined forces of the lightning spear and Priscilla's healing light. As the last remnants of Undeath vanished into nothingness, the tomb began to settle, the oppressive atmosphere dissipating like mist beneath the sun's rays. Hildine and Priscilla stood side by side, their bodies trembling from exhaustion and relief. Blaine, did he? Hildine asked, her eyes glistening with tears. I don't know, Asperia said. Asperia, Priscilla whispered, embracing her. We did it. For Lucille. I didn't feel his death, Estelle interjected softly. Wherever he is now, he was at least alive when he left this place. It was the blade acting on its own will, Asperia said. Once I've freed Lucille, we'll find a way to bring him back. I dedicate this victory to Blaine, Hildine said softly, holding her spear high into the air. The words sounded like they should have been a triumphant roar, but she struggled to push them from her lips. To Blaine, Priscilla said, placing a hand on Hildine's shoulder. To Blaine, Estelle and Asperia added. With an uneasy determination, Hildine, Asperia, Estelle, and Priscilla made their way back to the entrance of the tomb. I keep mispronouncing that word. That's the end of chapter 16. We're on the last chapter, plus the epilogue. Let me get a drink of water here. Since obviously my voice is starting to wane from its power, I've used all my voice's power. It is hard to, read with different voices for, 2.5 hours straight, but, we do it. For the books. Chapter 17. Now, in front of Lucille's statue, choked up with emotion. Now, in front of Lucille's statue, Asperia gritted her teeth, her fingers trembling as she attempted to steady herself. Hildine placed her spear on the ground and sat quietly, allowing the women to talk uninterrupted. Estal joined her, sitting beside her and observing in silence. My powers have amplified greatly with the passage of time. I can reach her, Priscilla said, casting a thread of light between Asperia and Lucille. This will not last long, but you can communicate through your heart, so to speak. This only works for those who have a strong bond. Lucille's thoughts were distant and difficult to grasp. Asperia clenched her jaw. She would not allow this curse to win. Asperia, Lucille whispered, her voice weak. I'm glad you're not alone. She touched Lucille's face. I've let you down. Again. Asperia, I trust you, Lucille murmured. Your faith in me is misplaced, she confessed, her voice cracking. I'm not enough to break this curse. I've failed my one task. Never, Lucille insisted. You're stronger than anyone I know. You fought through so much, and you'll fight through this too. Lucille. Asperia's voice was barely audible, choked with emotion. She knew she couldn't let this be the end. She had come too far and fought too many battles to allow Lucille's light to be snuffed out by a cruel twist of fate. With renewed determination, she pored over the curse once more, her fingers tracing the lines of ancient power that held the key to saving Lucille's life. The weight of her own inadequacy bore down on her, but in that moment, she found something greater, the unwavering love she held for Lucille. The sudden arrival of the dragons, guided by King Salahan himself, startled Asperia from her single-minded focus on the curse. They descended gracefully from the sky, their massive wings casting shadows over the land. She could feel their immense power, a force she once wielded to transform them in the first place. Asperia Thuris, he announced, his voice resonant with authority. We've come to offer our aid. We may have been your enemies once, but we cannot stand idly by while mistakes right in front of us can be undone. Your Majesty, Asperia replied cautiously, her mind racing with questions. Why would you help us now, when your own curse still holds? Because we recognize our role in this tragedy, one of the dragons answered, its voice deep and somber. We have come seeking redemption and hope to make amends for our past mistakes. It is as simple as that. It is our mistake we seek to correct, not yours. Time is of the essence, another dragon added, its tone urgent. There is an accumulation of power here that we can all draw from. Together, we can break this curse. Can I truly trust you? Asperia asked, her heart pounding in her chest as she weighed her options. And do you really want to trust me? Asperia, King Salahan said, meeting her gaze. You are the only one who could break the curse that binds us as well. We need each other. There will be time to discuss what you can do for us in return later. It is not relevant right now. All right, she finally agreed, her eyes never leaving the king's. Let's work together to save Lucille. Immediately, the dragons gathered around Asperia, with each contributing their unique abilities and knowledge. With their combined powers, they began to unravel the intricate web of magic that held Lucille captive. Asperia focused intently, her fingers dancing across the air as she manipulated the energy coursing through her veins, guiding all other power into her own, bending it into exactly what was needed at each stage. Concentrate on the origin of the curse, a single thread, one dragon instructed, its voice a soothing balm to her frayed nerves. Use your natural amplification of magic to break it apart. Remember, Asperia, King Salahan added, his voice firm yet encouraging. You are not alone in this. We stand with you. Relax your body and your mind. You are tense, but this is not a race. Slowly. Take your time and dissect each piece. You're right. Thank you, Asperia whispered, drawing strength from their support. She delved deeper into the magic, feeling the curse's tendrils twisting and writhing beneath her touch. Asperia. Lucille's thoughts were weak, but Asperia felt them. I believe in you. Lucille, Asperia said, her love for the woman fueling her resolve. I'm sorry for what my actions led to. The dragons are right. We must right our wrongs whenever the opportunity arises. This will only be the beginning. As they continued to work together, Asperia, for the first time, felt the curse begin to weaken, the tide shifting, its once tight grip loosening in the onslaught of their combined efforts. The dragon's remorse and desire to make things right resonated deeply within her, echoing her own need for redemption. Almost there, she murmured, sweat beading on her forehead as she pushed herself to the brink of exhaustion. Just a little more and, now, a final push. Give it everything you have, King Salahan ordered, a surge of power following his command. Break free, Lucille! Asperia screamed, her voice filled with love, determination, and the weight of her conviction. With a final burst of power, Asperia shattered the curse, freeing Lucille from its hold. The sky seemed to break apart, releasing a torrent of energy that rippled through the air. The curse's shackles cracked and crumbled, freeing Lucille from its grasp. Her body glowed with an ethereal light as she collapsed onto the ground, gasping for breath. Lucille! Asperia cried out, rushing to her side to support her. Asperia! Lucille murmured weakly, her eyes fluttering open to meet the gaze of her saviors. Thank the stars, Asperia whispered, tears streaming down her face. She had done it. No, they had done it. Against all odds, they had broken the curse and saved the woman she loved. As Lucille clung to consciousness, her strength slowly returning, Asperia turned to the dragons, her heart overflowing with gratitude. Thank you, all of you, she said, her voice choked with emotion. Without your help, I could not have done this. Time has changed all of us, Asperia, one dragon replied solemnly. Your courage and love for Lucille has shown us the true meaning of redemption, King Salahan said, nodding his head in respect. You have our eternal gratitude. Promise me, Asperia said, locking eyes with each dragon in turn, that you will allow me to return this favor someday. I swear to you that I will find a way to break your curse as well, even with my weakened magic. Asperia. Lucille's voice was still weak, but there was no mistaking the pride and love in her eyes as she struggled to adjust to speaking. Shh, Asperia soothed, placing a gentle finger over Lucille's lips. Rest now, my love. The battle is over. Your promise is more than good enough, King Salahan told her. We accept your vow and will stand by your side in days to come if the need arises. You are welcome in our city any time. Thank you, Asperia said once more, her voice filled with conviction and determination. She looked down at Lucille, her heart swelling with love and relief. Together, they had faced so much. Together, they would forge a new path forward, one where they could be free to love and live without fear. Rest now, she whispered to Lucille, cradling her gently in her arms as the dragons watched on. We have a lot of lost time to make up for, but all the time in the world to do it. My hero, Lucille whispered, her voice soft like the soft rustle of leaves. Only because I had help, Asperia replied, glancing toward the dragons, their once enemies turned to allies. She felt a flash of gratitude, tempered by the knowledge of the curse that still bound them. Together, we overcame the impossible. Lucille's eyes twinkled like the stars she once communed with, and managed a weak smile. I knew you would come back for me someday, even when I doubted myself. I never lost faith in you. Your strength has always inspired me, Lucille, Asperia said, her heart swelling with admiration. Even trapped in stone, you held on to yourself. Because of you, Lucille murmured. You were my guiding star, Asperia, the light that led me through the darkest nights. As they shared a tender moment, the dragons gathered around them, their massive forms casting long shadows across the flowery meadow, an unexpected byproduct of their purification spell. King Salahan stepped forward, his deep voice resonating through the air. We have wronged you both, and for that we are truly sorry. Thank you, Asperia responded, her mind churned with thoughts of the challenges they would face together, and the daunting task of breaking the dragon's curse. We have a lot of work to do. Asperia, Lucille began hesitantly, her hand brushing against Asperia's. As we rebuild our lives in this new world, Let me help carry more of your burdens this time around. Lucille, Asperia whispered, a tear trailing down her cheek. As long as I have you back, nothing will feel like a burden anymore. Hildine stood quietly, offering the spear to keep Salahan. He shook his head, declining. It belongs to you now. Keep it. You have proven yourself worthy of wielding it. As quickly as they arrived, the dragons flapped their mighty wings and ascended into the sky. Priscilla knelt beside Lucille, smiling and embracing her tightly. Please be happy, she said before stepping back and allowing her temporary human form to slowly transform back into a dragon. Thank you, Priscilla. I wish the same for you, Lucille said, waving goodbye to her friend as Asperia helped her to her feet. Once I've recovered, would it be all right if I joined you on more adventures? Priscilla called out to Hildine. I would be honored, Hildine shouted with a smile. I'll free them, Asperia promised as they disappeared from sight. I already have theories. Just need to run some tests, Anne. Lucille put her finger over Asperia's lips. I know you'll achieve it. You can tell me all the details later, Lucille whispered, gripping Asperia's hand tightly. But for now, all I want is for you to kiss me. Without hesitation, Asperia pressed their lips together. She'd awaited this moment for so long. Finally, after 2,000 years, it was here. Epilogue! 1 week later! Asperia, are you certain this is the right way? Lucille asked, her blue eyes scanning their surroundings with an air of uncertainty. Trust me, Asperia replied. I've studied the maps enough to know that this is the way. But those are outdated, Lucille protested. As they navigated through the woodland, Lucille suddenly stopped, her body tense as if struck by an unseen force. She gripped Asperia's hand tighter, her breath coming out in short gasps. Lucille, what's wrong? Asperia asked, panicked. Apologies, Lucille said, struggling to regain her composure. I just had a vision of your friend Blaine returning through a portal alone at some point in the future. He will find his way back on his own before anyone can figure out a way to help him. I can't explain why, but it fills me with even more relief than it should. That is certainly a relief, Asperia said with a sigh, smiling. We'll tell the others soon. It'll take some time to track them down, Lucille pondered, her gaze drifting toward the sky above them, searching for answers among the stars. But for now, let's make sure we can even get where we're going today. Indeed, Asperia agreed, giving Lucille's hand a reassuring squeeze as they continued on their path. This wasn't at all what I gleaned from the vision, Lucille added. Blaine is the chosen of the stars, just as we are. Long before his birth, his soul connected to our lover's star. Everyone has one, but by accident or fate, he came to be connected to ours and did not connect to one of his own. Fate drew him to meet women in love. If we'd been a man and a woman, he likely wouldn't have noticed since those relationships are more common. I hope it has not been a burden to him. Asperia smiled. Actually, he spoke of the women he'd met quite highly. I found him to be wise and open-minded. Once all these events have resolved, will that disconnect him from our star, and will he connect to his own after that? I would hope he'd find a love of his own someday. Lucille rubbed her chin. I wish I knew. In theory, it is possible. Perhaps it is already severed. For reasons I cannot explain, my ability to read the stars have weakened. I no longer see the threads of fate clearly. Good enough, Asperia said, smiling. Asperia's eyes followed the glistening path of a dragonfly as it darted through the labyrinthine undergrowth. The dense forest had seemed to close in around them, the branches overhead forming an oppressive canopy that allowed only slivers of sunlight to pierce through. She felt the weight of their journey pressing down on her like a heavy burden, but with Lucille's warm hand in hers, lightened the load. Blaine's future, it gives me hope, Asperia confessed, her voice barely a whisper above the rustle of leaves beneath their feet. Now I can focus all my attention on freeing the dragons. Lucille smiled, her eyes sparkling like starlight. I couldn't agree more, my love. You're amazing. There's nothing you can't do. The somber atmosphere of the forest seemed to recede as they ventured deeper into its heart, their steps growing lighter with each shared laugh and stolen kiss. The bond between them was evident in the way they had moved in harmony, their every step in sync with one another. Asperia, look, Lucille pointed out, her gaze fixed on a treacherous river before them. Its waters whirled and churned, an ominous reminder of the challenges that lay ahead. Their steps slowed as they approached the riverbank, the sound of rushing water filling their ears. They hesitated for a moment, exchanged nervous glances before stepping onto the slick stones that jutted out from the swirling depths. This wasn't here before, Lucille whispered, her heart pounding in her chest. Yeah, Asperia admitted, rubbing the back of her head. Hold my hand and we'll try to cross at those rocks. If we fall, I'll use my magic to carry us the rest of the way across. Lucille nodded, her eyes locked on Asperia's as they traversed the treacherous river together. With each step, their confidence grew, setting their wavering balance and guiding them across the slippery rocks beneath their feet. As they reached the other side, soaked but unscathed, Asperia marveled at what would be an insignificant accomplishment for most. She had relied on magic for even the simplest tasks for so long that she'd forgotten what it was like to do almost anything without it. See? Lucille beamed, her face radiant with pride. I told you that you can do anything. Oh, you crossed it too, Asperia laughed, her heart swelling with affection. I've missed you so much. Asperia, Lucille whispered, her fingers intertwined with her lover's. Do you think about what our lives could have been like if we'd never met? A wistful smile played on Asperia's lips as she pondered the question. What a boring life that would have been. Her eyes flickered towards Lucille, and her smile grew tender. I don't want to even think about it. Not even as a thought experiment. Agreed, Lucille replied, squeezing Asperia's hand gently. We've faced so much together. It's hard for me to imagine a world where we didn't meet. As they continued through the shadowy woods, the couple encountered a steep incline, slick with mud from recent rains. Here we go again. It shouldn't be far now, Asperia said, gripping Lucille's hand tighter as they fought against the slippery mud. As they neared the top of the incline, Asperia mused on how far they'd come. Not only in their journey through Nethalos, but also in their personal growth. Here we are, Asperia whispered as they reached the summit. It's not exactly in one piece, but I thought you might want to see it again. Tears glistened in Lucille's eyes as she nodded fervently, taking in the sight of what was once her church. Thank you for bringing me here. After we rest here for a while, where would you like to go next? I think, after this I'd like to go to Arthurus, the city Blaine mentioned. It seems a good place to start studying the evolution of magic too. Blaine mentioned a powerful healer lives there, and I have some questions for her. Coming with me? As if you needed to ask, Lucille said, leaning forward and giving Asperia a kiss. And that is the end of the story. Again, Mr. Bogath does have a Patreon. You can find it over at Mr. Bogath's channel, or Mr. Bogath can go ahead and post a link to it. I've pinned a link with Mr. Bogath's book. You can buy this book and all the other books. Thank you very much, Mr. Bogath. There's Mr. Bogath's Patreon. For just a small membership fee, you can get access to all his books. $10. And you get advanced chapters of his current book. I believe 5 chapters in advance. So, there you go. Multiple readings. He has lots of books to choose from. Please go check him out. And with that, let's see. Maybe we'll raid somebody today. Who do we raid today? Oh, Datatoasty is having a birthday party. So let's go raid Datatoasty. Thank you all for joining me. The next book, I believe, is the final book, right? Right, Mr. Bogath? It's the final book. But will we find out if Blaine returns? Where did Blaine go? Obviously he's alive because Lucille said so. But what kind of stuff is he getting himself into? We'll find out next time, next month, on narration by Anna Belinda. But we're gonna raid Datatoasty. It's apparently their birthday, and they have a PNG debut and a 1K celebration going on. Big day for Datatoasty. So we're gonna raid Datatoasty. And I'll be back tomorrow at 2 p.m. with Art of Belinda Sunday. We will actually be working on another book of Mr. Brogat's. We'll be doing the art for the cover. I'm still working on the colorings. So, we will be doing that. But I will see you guys tomorrow at 2 p.m. And then my schedule resumes as normal for Tuesday and Wednesday, and then Saturday and Sunday, because I've worked enough this week. And I don't have to work any evenings next week. Yay! But good night, everybody. I hope to see you tomorrow.